Special call meeting of the Jackson City Council to order, May the 20th, 2014. And if you would please stand, and I'll lead us in the invocation and pledge. Father, we come before you this morning just proclaiming you as our Lord, our God, and our King, and acknowledging the fact that you are a sovereign God. Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this council. Your word says that they were ordained by you to serve your people in this city, Father, so we would just pray as we deliberate today that you would give them wisdom and discernment as we address those issues which affect your people. Father, we thank you for the many ways that you blessed us, many ways that you blessed our city. And Father, I would submit to you, Scripture says that a city on a hillside cannot be hidden. Father, let us be that city that cannot be hidden and be emulated across this nation. Father, we just thank you for this day. Thank you for the time of deliberation on our budget for next year. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nita, right now you can show Councilman Dodd, Councilman Cisco, not present. They hopefully will be in. Let me go to item 4, the invitation for public comment. We are addressing 2 ordinances today, and if there's anyone present who would like to be heard as this ordinance closes in on finality, please let me know and I'll be happy to call on you. We have 2 ordinances. The first reading is consideration of the ordinance for the 2014-2015 fiscal year operating and capital budget. And we normally would go to operating budget first, and let me just make just a brief comment to the council. This has been a challenging budget period for the city for obvious reasons. I want to thank Al and Sam, Karen, all the department heads for their cooperation in putting this budget together, because it has really been a challenge. On your outline, on your budget, on your first page, you'll see that we are showing roughly a $3 million reduction in our budget. $1 million of that, obviously, is due to inability from this point forward to make transfers from one of our special funds that we have used to supplement the general fund for probably 20 or 25 years. Received word from the controller this past September that would no longer be allowed. We found some part of a remedy for that, but certainly not totally. And we're probably looking at about a $1.2 million reduction there. And about $2 million of that is, I think, in grants. Obviously, the funding at the state and federal level is drying up. We're still fortunate enough to get some grants, but obviously the total amount of dollars received by the city and grants being approved for the city has certainly been reduced over the years. You'll see the 4.96% reduction in the budget. Some of that obviously is our grants, and you'll see a likewise reduction in our expenditures for this year. So we have funding the school system to be paid before the end of this calendar year of $1 million. And again, the transfer from one of our special accounts of which we'd normally made in the amount of $1.4 million, that's being reduced roughly down to about $500,000 less. In the budget, you will see no across-the-board increases as far as compensation for employees. We're just simply not able to do it this year, and we look forward. Obviously, that's of great concern to all of us. We want to compensate our employees fairly. In the budget, you'll see no school resource officers for next year, as we have traditionally done for the past number of years, and paid for those officers from the general fund of the city. That's roughly $300,000. We're going to take those, plans are, budget approved, to take those 6 school resource officers and put them on, back on our PD. As far as additional boots on the ground, if you will, obviously, we feel like, and tough choices have to be made, these 6 officers either being in the schools or on the street, and I don't think there's any debate as to the fact that we certainly need additional officers on the street. You'll see no funding for the emergency management agency this year. That's in the amount of $114,000 with $28,000 capital. Just looking at ways where we could regroup somewhat from our $1 million payment to the school system, but to the county. EMA by state law is an agency which is delegated to county governments across the state. Some cities do participate, others do not. Some of them participate at a much lesser level than we have over the years. So we feel like this year that we will obey the law and go by the letter of the law and let the county, since it is delegated as part of their responsibility to fund the EMA, let them do that this year. Library funding remains the same as last year. They'll be getting the same amount of money, unlike our departments, who overall will probably be looking at about a 1.65% decrease in their operating budget. And that's obviously to maintain the maintenance of effort, which is required by state law as far as our libraries. A small decrease in the JTA funding is minimal. I think it's about $5,000. So, and we're going to have a minor increase in our dental and vision insurance for employees to cover those increased costs. So with that, Al, if you would be good enough to kind of give us an overview, and I know you got your overhead, and we're ready to go.
Mayor, I think you covered everything. You took my whole show away.
He took everything.
But seriously, here's the agenda we're going to try and follow today. I'm just going to briefly address the general fund, the ordinance, and the tax ordinance, and talk about where we have come from on the general fund and where we're at now, and then where we're going to go with the FY15 budget. Talk about debt service and revenue, and then myself and Karen or whomever else is needed will address the general government operating expense, and then we'll come on down to the operations and have Chief Kendrick and Chief Stewart, and on down the line through Public Works, Recreation, Public Buildings, and then it'll probably be this afternoon, although we'd like to go as expediently as possible, but we'll talk about the Sportsplex and solid waste with the only other major funds along with capital. So that's what we plan to do. The budget ordinance that you have in your book is basically, and the mayor went into it a little bit. We started out trying to reduce all of our expenses by 1.65%. You won't see that number hardly anywhere because there are so many other factors that come into play. But that's what we did, was take last year's budget, Sam, myself, and Karen, and try and reduce everyone by 1.65%. Some of them are much greater, as you can see, because of the loss in grants in the police department. You got 35%, and in administration, the ECD grant, and then that's all reflected up here in the loss of revenues. But what you're looking at right here is a budget that shows revenues over expense by $125,360. So, Randy, we discussed with you earlier, this is no pull from the fund balance. Now, normally we have a sheet, a spreadsheet that Karen starts during this process here, and we make changes accordingly. But this year, we've already found so many changes, some of which has to do with what the mayor addressed, because when we put this budget together, we did not have any clear direction as to where the mixed drink tax would end up as far as a settlement with the school and the county, the school board and the county. So Karen has been kind enough to put together where we're already making changes. And what I'd like to do, these changes will be covered as we go through the various areas and departments. But basically, to make a long story short, we came up with a reduction in expense of $62,536. So if you add that to the $125,360 that we were to the good, you come up with a $187,896 revenue over expense when we go to the second hearing, but I'm sure there'll be other changes made accordingly. What I do want to highlight, and what the mayor addressed, is this $1 million transfer as part of the agreement. The first year, initial year, right up front, $1 million transfer to the schools. But that will come out of the 211 debt service fund. It will not affect the general fund. And the reason being, over the years, when we do this split, and I'll show you on the pie charts later as to what percent of every tax dollar goes to debt service and what goes to the general fund, that's not an exact science. And for example, last year when I did the estimate, we took an approach that we were going to bring in the $15.3 million loan, and I conservatively put 3% as the variable interest rate. Well, we only brought in or drew down $7.5 million, half of it, and the variable interest rate has been roughly 0.96. So you can see that funds would accumulate there that ATA has said we can use to pay a debt, not just a bonded debt, but this mixed drink tax to the school system is also considered a debt. So we will be taking $1 million out of the debt service, and this just shows that we're drawing from fund balance $936,866 to make the debt service fund balance, because we were already showing excess revenue over expense. So we will be going through all these. You'll have a chance to address them with Karen, myself, or the individual department heads. But the numbers to really look at is that the net result of the changes in the general fund expenses is a reduction of $62,000, which added to the $125,000 brings us to $187,000 to the good. And then we're going to get the $1 million initial payment out of the debt service fund, which relieves us. We had initially looked at a $211,000 payment to the schools before we had any idea what the negotiations would end up with, and we took that out because that's not part of the plan as it was finally approved. So we've got this list going. I'm sure you as the council will come up with some additional changes that might need to be made, or we ourselves as we go through. But I'd like to just take you very briefly where we're coming from. And you have, you should have this in your book that was handed out. I'll try and get the whole picture on here, because I think it's good to know where we're coming from. In 2010, we had a net increase of revenue
Excuse me,
over
just a minute.
spend.
Do we have it in the book? Where?
Should be right up front after the ordinance. You know, the ordinance, and then you, is about 7 or 8 pages long, and then you have the tax ordinance, and then you should have these charts.
I don't have it. Unless it's in
Say amen when you find it.
Oh, sorry. Karen, I'll get this to everybody. I did not give it to Karen, but I think it is important. So let's just look on the screen, and we can see that in FY10, we were positive 3.7 million. So we ended up with a fund balance of 25.8, which was a complete turnaround from about 3 years earlier when, 2 or 3 years earlier when Mayor Gist came into office. The next year, the state was unsure of how to handle the garbage fund, so they were combined by ATA, and that's why you see revenue going up from 61 million to 72 million. And the combined efforts of the general fund and the health and sanitation fund produced a $1.3 million positive, which brought us up 25.8 plus 1.3 brings us up to 27.8. So again, we improved our position. Then in FY12, we had some transfers to capital, and revenues didn't come in as quite high as expected. So we were down 2.4, and the fund balance went down further to 22.3, because if you recall, in 2012, that's when we had the $2 million payment to Lambeth. So in this case, you can't add and subtract 27.8 minus 2.4 and come out perfectly with 22.3, but there were some adjustments below the line that are not considered by ATA as operating cost, and Lambeth would be one of those. Then in 2013, which ended last June, we were positive again, so the 22.3 plus 1.6 will get you approximately to 23.9 in our fund balance. And not all of that is free for spending. There are reserves on that, and we'll go through that later.
Al, can you go back to between FY 2010 and 2011? 25.8 plus 1.3 is not 27.8. Where the other?
Well, that's what I'm saying. There are items below the line, transfers in and out. And the one that I highlighted over here was the Lambeth payment. But that's all in the ATA book that you're given each year, the audit report, and was, explained by Mike Hewitt. Okay, so that's where we're coming from. I want to show you where we're at right now, and it shouldn't scare you, but this is a report that Sam does every month, and for the mayor and all of us on his staff to show, and this is normal in these months when we pass the tax season. We're not getting in a lot of revenue. We're still getting in a big chunk of business tax, and 800,000 or 900,000 from the state each year, but it throws us into a negative position. So at the end of April, we were negative 1,000,002. That will increase so that when we close our books, not close our books, but when we end up in June, we'll probably be down 3 million. But there are so many revenues that have to be occurred because we're 2 months behind with all of our state reimbursements on sales tax and gas tax, and our own pickups on hotel, motel, and just the normal flow of business is normally 2 months behind on revenue. So we hope to come out break even, because right now we're currently running 3.2% below budget on expense, as you can see there, even though we have some problem line items that have, some of them are very well explainable and uncontrollable, like our ADA settlement, which caused legal to be at 132%. The overtime that we have in police and in some other areas, fuel expense, has put us a little bit over budget as to where we should be at the end of April, where if it was a perfect world, we'd be at a 0.83% of the total budget. And you can see all of these are running higher than the 0.83.
Excuse me, Al.
Yes.
Could you make this sheet available to us as well?
Okay?
Thank you.
So we've looked at where we're coming from, where we're at right now, and then going forward, just to give you a little idea, and we're very fortunate this year. First off, let's look at our property tax, which is obviously 30-some% of our income, and it's also somewhat of a barometer of where our city is going. And the thing to look at as we come over to the far right-hand side is that our property tax, if everything were collected, and we don't count on that, we always take it down to like 95%. But you can see what has happened in the past year, and it's very understandable. The commercial and industrial has grown because you see what's happening out at Columns 2 and other areas. But the residential, as you'll go through Tom Winbush's building permits, et cetera, there has not been a lot of residential development. And in fact, a lot of it has been reappraised downward, so that it's commercial that has carried us, and along with personal property tax, that would be equipment that would go into these new retail establishments and things you see out around the columns. So one thing I know, Mayor Gist, you always look at is the assessed value. The previous year we were at $1,488,000. Now we're at $1,535,000, and it's about a $473 million increase. And again, it's basically up here in the commercial and industrial, and the residential is lagging behind. There are some signs in the northwest area of our city where building has picked up once again, but this is the very key number here, that it has only gone up 3.1%, our main revenue. And then our secondary revenue would be sales tax, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. On the pie charts, which each year we attempt to show where we have come from. Last year, 20.85% of every dollar went to debt service. We had a total property tax and tax in lieu of, which comes mainly from JEA, of $34 million. That went up about $1.1 million to $35 million. And the reason why, and this is a little bit misleading this year, the percent has actually come down, is because we had excess numbers in the funds, like I said before, in the 211 debt service, and we were able to draw some of that money out. Next year, you'll see that go up significantly, as the $15.3 million loan, which we've only been paying interest on, we'll start paying principal on. So it'll kick that up. But it's nowhere near the 24% that you as a council voted on back when Frank Newdecker was here, and he and I worked on a percent that we, I guess we'd call it the ceiling, we did not want to exceed, because then we're going to run into problems. This number would be reduced to 76, and we'd have trouble funding our normal operations. So we're very fortunate this year to be in that position.
What's a guesstimate for percentage next year? You're saying it'll be higher next year?
Yes, because the total,
This one here.
well, let me show you, Randy, how we come up with this number. It's a chart that takes what's in Chancery Court, what we think historically we're going to collect, plus we take the property tax and we apply a 4% reduction as non-collectible, and then we take tax in lieu of what we're going to get from JEA, and we go through a formula that comes up with the 20.59 based on 7.2 million, and taking about 300,000 out of the fund balance. Next year, that's probably going to go up to 21 point something.
Okay, it's not a huge jump then. but it
No,
will
not
be
a
okay.
huge jump. We're not in bad shape at all, and we don't plan on borrowing any more money until 2015. Sam, when did we say, basically?
We'll have a 10 million paid off, and we'll go back to the market, July 1st, 15.
Of 15, yeah. So again, like what I'm saying, Randy, is we're not coming anywhere close to the trouble spot that we had been in years ago.
Excuse me just a second. Have we spent half of the 15 million that we thought?
Approximately, we drew down 7.5, and Karen, how much, you keep a track on that, how much have we left to spend on that 7.5?
You spent about 5.7 million as the end of April 30th.
But by the end of the year and your carryover, we're
We're
estimating,
expecting another 1.8 to be spent.
so we'll be pretty close to using up
Correct.
the 7.5 million. And then we'll make our draw in July or August as needed. And that monies will last us, as Sam said, through all of this fiscal year, FY15. And then we'll have to look at going back to the market. Okay. Basically, let me just show you like where we're running on tax revenues. You can see that, and you don't have this chart, this is just a worksheet. May 6th, week ending May 16th, we had collected 28 million. And at the same point in time, last year, we had also, well, it was 28.5, here's 28.2. So we're about $300,000 ahead of our collections. But as Sonny Phillips, who works for me, likes to say, we've gotten most of the low-hanging fruit. Now we're out there making calls, sending letters, trying to force people to pay by default judgments on previous year taxes that would end up in tax sales, doing everything that we can. And likewise, when the county has default judgment and tax sales, that also flows over into us, because people can't get out of a tax sale unless they pay both city and county delinquent taxes. But that's where we stand as far as getting revenues in.
Mr. Chairman,
Hey,
Al,
Yes.
with respect to the TIP district, those figures are not included in here.
The TIF district taxes are included in there, and then we
Okay.
turn around and pay that out. And I'll explain what has happened on the TIF districts in a little later on. The other barometer or gauge that the mayor and I use, Sam, Karen, et cetera, is what's happening on sales tax, because that's a measurement of the spending and the growth, basically, of our community. Right now, estimating the last month, this number I can figure from the actual that we have, because we only retain about .267 of every sales dollar that's collected, because the rest of it through formulas goes to the schools. So this year, we're looking at about a 1.3 increase or growth over the previous year in sales tax. Last year, at this time when I was presenting up here, it was 1.8. The year before that, it was 1.6. And you have to go back quite a ways to come to some really good growth numbers. And that was when 10-11 compared to 9-10, we were up 4.9%. As we were coming out of the 2008-2009 doldrums, if you remember what happened to the market
Al, you
as
you
a
hit
whole.
something or something's happened.
I thought something happened to my eyes. Yeah, it's
This.
blurry now.
Well, I'm gonna have to ask for some IT help here, because that shouldn't have come on. And you got
He's
an
got-
I
idea?
think
what
help's
happened?
on the way.
Mr. Chairman, while we're waiting on the IT,
Sure.
as it relates to the sales tax money, can you kind of elaborate what happens with that money?
The sales tax money goes into the general fund and is used as support for all of our operating services that were provided, public safety and public works. So
Does
when
any
you
of the
take,
sales tax money go to the school system?
well, a good portion of it does, approximately 75%
Okay.
of every dollar goes to the school system.
But what we're looking at here is just what the city ends up with.
Right, that's this column
Okay.
over here, which actually turns out .267 of every dollar.
But 75% goes to school just right off the top.
75%, yes, roughly.
That's right. Does this figure hours?
Hmm.
Does that figure our share?
That's out.
Yeah, this figure here is ours. Roughly, we've estimated, Al, the amount of yearly sales taxes that goes to schools, which are collected in the city. We've estimated, what, 35, 36 million? Does that seem reasonable? And we keep 11?
We keep 11, yes.
Okay.
Total, well, you can see on this chart right here, of the 46 million that we collect, we're only going to retain 12.
Right.
So, 34 million there is going to schools. So we are, and then when you look at the fact of the property taxes paid by city residents going to the county that goes to schools, it's a much larger number. We have gone through that
Yeah,
exercise.
yeah, okay.
So by far, we as the city residents and the city commercial and industrial, we pay the majority of the school budget. Now, as we go on through the agenda here, and if I'm moving too fast, just stop me, but if you'll look in your books, where we start with in the ordinance itself, we showed you on the graph here, the first page, and then there's some revenue numbers behind that, but then we get into the heart of the matter, and that's the expenses here. And administrative and general government, And again, you can question anything that you want. I would suggest that we probably limit it to the ones that have increased, and you can see that with this ECD grant, CDBG block grant, we're down some 68%. So in total, that throws general government, general administration portion down 21%. And then you get down into the other areas of general government. And again, the only area that is up anything significantly is farmer's market. And Tony probably will address that later, but basically we have hired a part-time person working, 28 hours, something of that magnitude. So that is the only major increase in general government. But I would like to go through and highlight what Mayor Gist talked about before, and that's some of our areas of appropriation. He highlighted it, but I'll just show you on the chart itself. Emergency management, where we previously were giving $114,488. This year we've taken out, and he explained by law why we have done that. Jackson-Madison County Library, we are staying with our maintenance of effort of $487,750. We were asked by the county to go up to, what's Sam, 616, and we are not in a position to do that. This number here that we talked about before, we put in before the mixed strength tax was negotiated, the back payments with the school board and the county. So that number is coming out to $221,000. That's part of what Karen had on the spreadsheet before. And then we do have transfer to Jackson Housing Authority. Sam, you might want to elaborate on that a little.
CDBG is going to take on one staff member out of building department, $50,000 to pay the salary. And we're going to provide them a match for their home program of $25,000. So we're going to come out $25,000.
That's moving from building to CDBG for code enforcement, or? Okay.
We took that out of the building department.
Any questions on?
Is this residential or?
That's the guys that were, grant, one of the two guys that did the grant.
He will stay in housing, and this money will cover his salary.
So that's a new item this year that we have added. So our appropriations total as such is about $2,000,001. Same as it was last year, but a little different change in the mix by deleting EMA and sticking to our previous number of 487 on the library. And we will be taking out the 221,000 because that's not part of the payment plan that has been negotiated now. Another area that you as the council have been interested in before is the appropriation to other agencies. And again, we basically reduced, that's in your budget, the ordinance section is just right behind, so I know you have should have a copy of that.
It's the next to the last page in that section.
Appropriation to other agencies. Right, okay.
And I guess the only thing I would say here is that we applied the 1.65 reduction to the other agencies, just as we did to our own departments. To be fair, there was 2 of them that we couldn't reduce because it's based on, it's an assessment, and that's Southwest Human Resource Agency and Southwest Tennessee Development District. They remain the same. But otherwise, the other agencies, Carl Perkins, DeCola, Chamber of Commerce, Aspel, all of them were reduced 1.65%. And another agency, previous years, sometimes we've had committees address the grants and donations. And basically, they also were reduced, but the Chamber of Commerce, that 75,000, Mayor, that's part of a 4-year, well, a 5-year commitment, and this is the 4th year, so we could not reduce that. And we did take out the Southwest Human Resource Agency's summer program, but it's funded through a grant, CDBG, so it's, correct me, Sam, it's not out, it's just not on here. It's shown in other areas. That 25,000 that we talked about on the previous appropriation. So are there any questions on what we normally fund through grants and donations?
Just to be sure, there's a 1.65% reduction across the board.
Yes, that's what it says there in the second out of the 3 columns. And then the ones that are highlighted, like the chamber where we could not.
And those can't be changed.
Because that's a special, the other portion of the chamber appropriation on the previous sheet was reduced, but this is a commitment of 5 years at an X amount, 75,000, so it could not be reduced.
Thank you.
Okay?
Mayor, back in my days on the Joint Funding Committee, there was a lot of discussion with respect to West Tennessee River Basin. Are we getting any?
We do. They were retained in this year's budget, weren't they? West Tennessee River Basin
Yeah.
Authority. Yeah,
Yeah,
right, okay.
but there used to be discussion on whether the county should fund them or the city should fund them, and I just wondering, are we getting any attributes? or anything
We're,
like-
yeah, we're one of only several cities that contribute to their funding, and we've just assessed that over the past 4 or 5 years, and we received considerably more from that agency than we've paid in as far as actually working on stormwater drainage, clearing, working in areas that are low, and trying to get rid of flooding. So we feel that contribution has been fairly productive over the past number of years, because we're certainly getting our money back from it.
Okay. Okay.
One other thing that is a major expense, of course, is our health insurance. And it doesn't show specifically on here, but basically, and we've talked about this before, we are at roughly $6.7 million in claims, in healthcare claims, is what we have budgeted. There's a chance that we might come in under that this year at 6.4, but if you remember 2 or 3 years ago, we were up at like 7.5 million. And it's really a non-controllable thing, because we can't control the major medical expense of a heart replacement or cancer cases, but we are looking at another 6.7 million. This year we hope to come in under, and we would hope to next year also. But we've had to take some actions, and Sam can address a little bit more than I can maybe about this, but we've had two areas, dental and vision. And basically, the total premium increase on dental is $1.50. The city is taking $1 of that, and the employees 50 cents every pay period. And when we come down to vision, basically, we have a total premium increase of 50 cents per pay period, and it's split 50-50. The city is taking 25%, and the employees 25 cents. That's if you're an individual, and family the same way. It's split 50-50, same as the dental is split 33-67. So vision and dental, we have seen some increase, and unfortunately, we've had to go to the employees and split our normal way to help us overcome those issues. Now, basically, we want to get into, unless there's other questions in general government, which, if you recall, we were in good shape overall on general government. Go back to the initial page, and you can see that administration and general government make up the total general government, and we're down 21%, basically because of the grant that was eliminated, and then 5% in the other items of general government because we cut out some appropriations to EMA and held library, and took 1.65% out of all the other appropriations to agencies. So going back to the agenda, right now, I guess would be the best time, if there are no further questions, to have Chief Hendrick come up and.
Now, before you do that, I did have
Yes.
some questions on the mixed drink tax we get two mixed drinks tax. We get one just that's local entirely, and then one comes from the state. We've got two budget items. We've got one, which is $75,000 for the year.
Right, that's basically a tax on the distributors, and that is not, does not fall
Okay,
under.
that's got nothing to do with the other,
Right.
that's entirely separate thing. The community development block grant that actually gets budgeted into the general fund, that we've got a big reduction in that. I'm assuming that's a permanent reduction, we feel like. What's that fund used for, money used for, that's budgeted in the general fund?
Yes, that'd be,
We got a $2 million grant, Randy, from CDBG. Even though we're a entitlement agency, we got to set aside. Last year, the mayor had met with JA, and we gave them the majority of the money for sewers down Riverside.
Okay, that's what that's funded
And we're
for.
paying that off. And that's been our budget because we have to pay it off, and then Karen sends in a request for repayment, and we come back, and we don't go ahead and pay check.
Okay, so that will be a non-recurring, once that $2 million is gone, then.
That's right, it'll be out at 865, going out at 865.
The other question I had on the revenue side was the mixed drink tax revenue, the amount that we're budgeting. I wonder if we're not over budgeting still. I couldn't quite figure that out. I'm on 31,930. You've got your,
in the book.
yeah, in the book, I'm sorry, yeah.
No, well, we've attempted, between Karen and myself, we've reduced the mixed drink revenue by taking out the portion that she's gonna have to pay on a regular basis.
Well, I guess what I'm looking at is that year-to-date, of course, I realize that's just for 10 months. We've collected $108,000. And half of that in the future will go to the state, I'm sorry, to the school department. We're still budgeting $200,000 for the whole year.
That's half of what we would normally take,
Well,
because
it's half what we normally budget, but I'm looking compared to what we budgeted to what we actually collected. Is down considerable.
well, that's an uncontrollable item, but we still take the 50% out for payment to the schools.
Okay, I understand that, but I'm just saying that the amount that we collected year to date, on the worksheet is so much lower than what we're actually budgeting. Am I missing something there?
Councilman Wallace, the amount that's being paid to the school system has reduced that number. So the 108 that you see is minus the 50% that's gone to the school system.
It's already been paid. We started paying
Okay,
July.
and we did that for the whole year, all of 2000 and,
We did not pay them for the whole year, because if you'll remember, we stayed 2 months behind in revenue. So the first payment due to them was in September, which would have been July's receipts.
okay. Okay, well, what I'm looking at then is I'm looking at what the city's actually received, what we've got left in there. If I take that number, divide it by 10 and multiply it by 12, that's $130,000 the city will end up with for the year.
We don't have 10 months of revenue.
Okay, but even if I divide it by 8 and multiply by 12, that's still gonna be less than the $200,000 that we're budgeting. So I'm wondering if we may need to look at that again and make sure we're not over budgeting what we think we're gonna end up with in that for the year.
That'd be Mr. Thune, he put the revenue in, but I just wanted you to know that the
Yeah.
amount that you're seeing
Okay.
has already been paid to the school.
I'll
Okay.
take another look at that.
Yeah, and in addition to that, the 108 that we've got 100% of that for several months too. So, yeah, we'll probably need to look at that one again, Al.
But what I did was reduce last year was 400,000 budget, and I reduced it to 200,000, basically for 50% of it going to
Okay.
the school. But
Yeah,
I'll take
well, I
another-
understand just, take last year's budget and take half of it, but if we're not collecting anywhere near last year's budget, then we need to adjust it for that too.
But you gotta
And
realize.
I'm
like-
drinking my share.
Oh, man.
The other question I had on the revenue side was state income tax, we received nothing. Do we just get that once a year or, okay. And that should be,
June.
okay.
And that's a number we don't know either. We just,
Well, we haven't received it yet, so.
right.
Uh,
Are there any other questions then about general government, or we'll go on to?
Yeah, I got a couple other on general government.
Okay.
If you give me just a second here. What that is. The Omen Arena revenue, we budgeted 125,000. Year to date, we've collected 167,000, almost 168,000. We're still only
Right.
budgeting
We have a good
125.
year.
Is there something that's happened at Omen Arena that's not gonna be happening next year that we know of to reduce that?
I might let the mayor comment.
Maybe
Well-
Omen Arena won't be here anymore.
No, we hope the same thing happens next year that's happening this year. Revenue is up. Staff has done a great job in reduction of utility costs, probably close to, what, Karen, 40%, 30% of the total utility costs budgeted, plus the arena will still be made available to Madison Academic for their physical education, for their basketball games, and also Lane College. So that is additional revenue coming in. The amount that's projected next year, I think, is just based on a history of us traditionally over budgeting revenue and not getting there over the past year due to lack of events and utilities, but that seems to be changing.
Okay.
So that's a very conservative approach, because we don't know what events we're gonna be able to draw, quite frankly.
Yeah.
All right, then I've got the opposite question on the Civic Center revenue. We analyze or annualize what they've collected to date. That's about 150,000. We're budgeted 262 for revenue next year.
Again, I might let the mayor comment on that, but that's
Are we
somewhat
expecting
of
a
an
lot more events to happen
uncontrollable.
there?
Well, only Perry Murphy, the Civic Center manager, could probably answer that, but I will submit to you that for the past month and a half, using the same strategies that we used at Omen Arena, more events and reduction in costs, especially utility costs, at the Civic Center. I can only anticipate, additional events for next year along with reduced costs. So, I mean, that is, again, it's all relative when it comes to, you really can't estimate how many events you're going to have unless they're already on the books, because they come and go during the month. And I don't know.
Well, my question, I guess, is we're estimating we're gonna have about twice as many events next year as we did this year. And that scared
Not
me.
necessarily twice the events. Hopefully, the revenue will go up with a few more events. It all depends on what type of event it is. If you have a concert and you sell the box office tickets and the revenue is substantial, then and you have other events where you charge $300 for a meeting room, and so it's really pertaining to what type of event it is and how many we have, and that's just it's pulling it out of the air and trying to estimate the numbers.
We did reduce it all 30% from last
Yeah,
year's
I saw it
budget.
was reduced. It just looked like it wasn't reduced enough compared to what we actually were gonna receive. Huh, yeah. Yeah.
But as the mayor said, that's somewhat of a, I don't want to say a guesstimate, but unless you have events already on the books that you can count, you just have to have a plan to go out and try and bring in concerts and,
Oh, yeah, I understand that it's a guess, and we don't know what events we're getting. The only thing I was looking at is we're budgeting so much more than we actually received year to date.
I think you can probably the best estimate on getting that number as close as we can would be to take a look at the last 2 months of operation of the Civic Center, the revenue and the expenses. Revenue has come up, expenses down, mainly because of utility cost reductions there. So that may be the best way to get a more accurate number as to the revenue for next year, is take a look at the last 2 months and see what was estimated and plug all that in and see where we end up.
But one thing we need to do is we're gonna have to $4,000 next year that you can add to the 123, right on the top of the stand, is at least the parking lot out there. That we never counted that for, that brand new money.
Yeah, see, remember, we approved the lease to the state and they're paying us, anybody know how much they're paying us a month?
54,000.
A year.
It's showing
Yeah,
there.
not a
Okay,
month.
that would account for a hunk of it.
So that's a pretty big chunk of it.
That's a big chunk.
You add that to 123, man, you're right up there at the top right there.
Okay. Okay, that's all I had on the general fund.
Okay.
I'm sorry, not on the general fund, but
Chief Kendrick?
Okay, council okay for right now? Council want to continue, or council would like, do I hear comments? Everybody good for right now?
I need a break, but you can go on.
Show-
You can go on.
Let's show council in recess for 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay.
10 minutes.
I'm with you, Vicky. I'm with you.
oh, that's true. No,
In the session, we'll hear from our police department, Chief Barry. Morning, y'all.
Morning, Mayor, members of council.
Morning.
You guys this morning, I've asked Chief Michaels to join me as we discuss the police budget for the fiscal 14-15 year. I know there's a lot of information that you've been provided, and I would guess that probably the best thing for us to do is defer to you to ask those questions that you feel like might be relevant to maybe areas that are gray or questionable to you in some regard. Only thing that I would preface as far as, the comments and so forth that you might make in lieu of the variables and some of the line items and so forth, a lot of this is driven by the fact that many times within our agency, we will do a realignment of personnel as far as our staff is concerned, and when we see this realignment, therefore, you see differences in variables as far as actually the cost per line item. So I'll make you cognizant of that, and we would be open and welcome to entertain any of your questions.
In your packet there with the ordinance, you can see the total police department budget is down 35%, and Chief Kendrick can answer any and all of your questions. Just because the line item is down, you still may have questions as to why and wherefore and things of that nature. So
I have a question, if I may, Chief, relative to just boots on the ground, not necessarily looking at the numbers, but just boots on the ground, the number of officers that we have on the street, has that decreased?
Has it decreased? No, sir, it has not.
Okay.
Now, there's been a lot of variables there just because of let's just say, being short of personnel. But as far as the actual boots on the ground, we still are budgeted for that same amount.
Okay, and that's my concern. I think that's many of the public's main concern
Yes, sir.
is that, you know.
In fact, as far as those members of our agency that actually serve in a patrol capacity, we have at least about 64% or better of our department is committed to those daily
Okay.
activities of service to the citizens of our community.
Okay, thank you, Chief. That's promising.
I have a couple of questions. Can you just expound on what the professional services are? See, it's an increase in almost 20,000. Just what are the professional services in this line item budget?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I went blank there on you.
It's all right.
Let's kind of give you an idea of what we're attempting to do. We have at least 9 or 10 weeks of in-service training every year as required by the Post Commission. This is an unfunded mandate, but it's something that we must do in order for law enforcement officers to retain their commission. Presently, as far as law enforcement in the state of Tennessee and in many other places, there is what is called a virtual academy. This virtual academy gives us the opportunity to have that officer to actually go to a computer, go online, and take courses that are synonymous or indicative to the requirements by Post Commission as far as this training is concerned. Chief Michael and I have a great amount of concern that in the fact of bringing these officers in for this 9 weeks, and I'll kind of give you an overview of what transpires, and I'm just going to give it in the perspective of one officer. You bring one officer in there, and during this 5 days that officer's in that class, the chances are more than likely that it'll be on this officer's regular days off, at least 2 of their regular days, 2 days off. So while that officer there is in that class on their days off, because it's not their regularly scheduled work days, they're actually receiving compensatory time for that time that they're in school. Then given the fact that they're in school, that means their shift is probably short. So with their shift being short, in order for us to have the adequate number of people out on the street, we'll call someone in to fill that shift. Then we're having to pay that person time and a half. Compensatory time is at a rate of time and a half. Then the compensatory time that this officer has earned, they are then required to take this compensatory time off in a certain period of time. So therefore, we go back to another scenario, their own shift, they've got to take the compensatory time off, but then again, taking it off means there's a hole or a vacancy, we have to fill it, so we're bringing somebody in to fill that vacancy, which equates to another rate of time and a half as far as the numerics and what we have to pay out. This virtual academy will cost us basically $89 an officer, which is what that figure relates to as far as the 19,000 and so forth. With that allowance, what we intend to do is have this officer to complete the majority of their in-service training while they're actually on duty. They can either literally come into the station, be a workstation or be a laptop or some other instrument that they can actually get on the internet to do this. They can come in and do that. That way we're not running into these scenarios where it's really becoming, it's really impacting us greatly as far as us being able to manage that overtime that we're using within the department. And the reason we've asked for this to be broken out is we would like to track it and just make sure that we see that what we feel like is a point of appropriate logic is actually going to present itself well for us.
Chief Kendrick, excluding yourself, how many trained policemen do we have, police officers do we currently have working in administration?
We've slotted for 220, well, excluding myself, it would
Yeah.
be 219 commissioned officers.
They're working in administration.
No, I'm sorry, no,
Yeah.
ma'am. I
Yeah.
missed the key word,
Yeah,
administration.
yeah.
Oh, nowhere near that
That seems a little
many
top heavy there.
Nowhere
Okay.
near that many working in administration. Chief, do you know an exact number?
We excluding Chief Kendrick, we have 12.
12. Is that excluding secretaries? That's
That's
the
excluding
trained-
secretaries. That's
trained,
sworn
okay.
police officers.
Thank you.
And Chief,
Patrolman.
Go ahead.
Patrolman,
No, there's not any patrolmen.
no, how many?
Oh, how many patrolmen? When we're at full staff, there should be around 135.
And then we're talking about the additional 6 from the school resource officers that we're not gonna fund them in the fall, is that right, Mayor? And our officers are
Not in the
coming back to
budget.
the street.
They should be, school's out this week, so really they'll be back with you all at the end of this week.
At the
or
end
maybe-
at the end of the school year.
Right, they get report cards Thursday, so at the end of the week or first of next week, they'll
back
actually be
with you.
back on the street.
Okay.
That brings up to about 172.
Well, Councilman Buchanan, I may have been misleading because I guess there's a number of different ways that I look at things. I look at a sworn force of 220, but if you discount the 6 SROs, then it would actually be 214 if you looked at it in that perspective,
Okay,
okay?
patrolling the street.
214 that would have that levity, yes, to be
Okay.
committed to either patrolling the street, criminal investigations, gang unit, drug
Okay.
unit, aviation, and other specialty expectations or tasks.
Okay. Now, this question was brought to me this morning, and I don't have the answer, and I'm just throwing it out to the mayor and council and to the police department. They're saying when we pull our school resource officers, that the deputies from the sheriff department won't be ready to come in the fall because they won't be received their training? That was thrown to me just
Yeah,
10
Councilman,
minutes ago.
there's been some discussion as to the readiness of the sheriff's department to provide the full complement of school resource officers going to be required for the public school system. I think they have traditionally had 4, Barry, as far as sheriff's deputies in the schools.
They went up to 6.
They went up to
this
6
year.
this past year.
Okay, all right, and so those will come back. Those have served in that capacity for several years. Those will be back. That's not going to get them where they need to be. And my initial indication to the county is that, the mayor of the council, I don't think has any issues with school resource officers. We feel like we need them. It's a question of can we pay for them? And do we have the funding to pay for them outside our responsibility to city citizens? And my indication was that we do have trained school resource officers, which have been in the schools for a number of years. And we have a breakdown of the cost of those officers. And if they're willing to and would like to enter in an agreement with the city to provide those officers and reimburse the city for it, then we'd be more than willing to do so.
Is this in your conversation with the county?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And how long would we have to go on if this comes to fruition?
This
Till
would
they
be,
receive the training, or-
yeah, this would be one of the questions which the chief and his staff's gonna have to answer. If we turn 6 of our officers loose, which will be with us this summer, in addition to what we've had, because school is out, when they go back, how long will they serve as school resource officers? Because we're not going to, I don't think, be in a position to come back and hire 6 more officers to replace them full-time without knowing how long these school resource officers will be used in the schools. So we've got to adapt and make some moves to make sure that we have the boots on the ground that we need. And then also the fact that I don't think we're going to be prepared to hire 6 new officers to replace those 6 who are in school, because they may not be used but 2 or 3
So
months until
they're
they're
saying
trained.
they're willing to pay for it.
That's right.
Okay.
Well,
And how long is the training
How long is the
to
training?
become a resource officer?
Uh,
I'm just
they
looking at
have
the
it-
timing
they-
of it.
The training is, for the school resource officers, approximately 40, it can be between 40 and 80 hours, and they're required to do that within 1 year of being placed in that responsibility.
So
But they should be able to do it
placed
this
in and
summer,
then do the
shouldn't they?
training.
Excuse
So
me,
you say
they can be placed and then receive the training, but they have 1 year by post rules and regulations to get that training done.
So this summer they can be trained, is that, are we saying that?
That depends on whether or not there will be the school available to facilitate getting this done.
No, I'm not talking about our office, I'm talking
No.
about the county's.
The count, there again, there would have to be a school actually available for these personnel to receive that training.
training available to them. We
Okay.
don't know if the training will be available.
Well, I think,
or
and I
not
think
this
what maybe Councilman Buchanan is referring to is, does the county have 6 officers they can pull off the street because if they have to hire 6 brand-new deputies, then they're gonna have to train them to be deputies first, and then school resource officers.
Yeah.
And which, if you look at it from that perspective, Councilman Buchanan, to bring that new deputy in, that's a 10-week school just going to Donaldson, to the police academy to obtain your certification. So exponentially, that really projects the time then as far as that placement being effective.
That's 2 months and a half.
if not longer, because you've got to accept application, do background investigation, find out if they meet the requirements to be a law enforcement officer, and then go to the school, then come back as we do and try to acclimate our officers to the way we do business with our agency.
So our position now that we're not able to fund them, but if the county's willing to pay, is that our position?
That's pretty much it. If they're willing to, and that agreement obviously would be brought to council, Councilman, once they make that decision that, yes, we want Jackson PD officers, X number of them in the schools as school resource officers. I've asked them to prepare, or will ask them to prepare an agreement that they will pay for those and give us pretty much a time frame on how long we're going to have them, rather than us having to go hire, 6 new people and then all of a sudden we've got 12 on payroll.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, you touched on the reorganization of personnel. Could you help me understand, as far as the reduction in other salaries, like the gang unit of about $84,000 and then the increase in administrative salaries, how that works out?
Okay, in the administration, the movement there of personnel had to do with the realignment of our organizational chart. There were 2 individuals that were moved over to administration. That was a captain's position and a clerical position. That captain's position at one time was in crime prevention, where you see crime prevention showing a reduction, but you also see administrative, the administrative line item elevating. That's because of the movement of those people coming in and absorbing their salaries, their step increases, and so forth. So that's the reason you're going to see that. As far as looking down at the gang unit, and I'll just give you kind of an overview, and this may play into some other things, but let's look at, and this may equate to an explanation concerning overtime as far as overall within the agency. 2008, the city of Jackson elected with the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System to use the bridge program for those members that were in public safety. This bridge program went into effect July 2010. In that bridge program, as an employee, if you are 55 years of age or have 25 years of service, you can elect to draw your Tennessee Consolidated Retirement. There's a bridge that attaches itself. This bridge attaches itself and funds this retirement until you reach the age of Social Security. The bridge then falls off and you draw your Social Security pension. Along with that, also another caveat was in that particular retirement aspect was the fact that it was mandatory retirement. If you were a patrol officer, you had to retire at 60 years of age. If you were an individual that actually 50% or better of your time was in an administrative function, then you had to mandatorily retire at 62 years of age. So given the fact that this came into play in 2010, and it drove that mandatory 60 years or that mandatory 62, or otherwise gave somebody the option to just say, hey, I've got my 55 or I have my 25, I'm going to do something different. You can see the dynamics that occur within our agency because of the age of our workforce. You have many people that were already, I see the mayor come down quite frequently and hand out certificates of 30 years of service to the Jackson Police Department. Well, if you start it, we have to be 21 years of age in order to attend. And you give somebody a certificate for 30, then it tells you they've already met their 25, and they're getting pretty close to their 55. So you can see how the dynamics have changed for us drastically. Now, looking at overtime, as far as when is it more plausible, and Councilman Brooks, you asked this, and I think Councilman Wallace, you have some concern about this. When is it more plausible to hire more people or continue to pay the overtime? From all the research I've done, it says it's more plausible just to pay the overtime if your reason for paying it is short term. I would support or submit to you guys that I feel like, based on what we've been impacted with since 2010, more so I'd say in 11 and 12, because it began to align these people to the point of having to leave, that maybe this is going to just be short term for us and not a long term process as far as this overtime is concerned. In fact, I'll go ahead and put this up here because we try our best to track exactly what's going on with overtime within our agency, and you can kind of review that. But to go back to Councilman Congress' comment about the fact of seeing a reduction in certain places. In our aviation unit, we knew that our pilot there had already met the expectations of being able to retire and to pursue something else in his life. So in order to prepare ourselves for that, we moved an individual from Metro Narcotics who was attached to DEA, Chief, is that correct? That's correct. He was attached to DEA, but it was his desire to engage in obtaining his aviator license to be able to fly the helicopter, so we went ahead and moved that person over in preparation for Sergeant Wilshire to leave, and to make sure that we had a pilot in the absence of Sergeant Wilshire leaving. Okay, that just started a domino effect, because when we moved the person from Metro, then we had to move somebody from the gang unit over in Metro to fill that vacancy as far as the DEA task force is concerned. So therefore, Councilman, that's where you see the variables go as far as people having been aligned to one position, but now they've been taken from that and moved to the other. So it reduces where they were initially budgeted or set up for, but yet when they move to another position, it shows a greater draw on it, and it shows you being over as far as your percent of expenditures are concerned. And this is, my guess, maybe more of a plausible explanation. About a week or so back, we hired in 7 new officers with the Jackson Police Department. Before the end of this year, and probably by, I'd say by July this year, if not sooner, but more than likely July, we will lose 6. And we know of a certainty before the end of the 14-15 fiscal year, counting those 6, there will be 3 more. We will have lost 9 because they will have elected to retire. So you can see this ever-evolving situation that we're dealing with now, and I think a lot of it is driven because of the age of our agency, and people have a greater levity now to move on, or are required to move because of the expectations of the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement Public Safety Officer Program.
Chief Kendrick, of those 69 that will be retiring, are any of those in administration?
Are you? I'm not sure, Chief, do you recall?
I can tell you real quick.
I know one right now is on the radar, is in administration, yes.
We have one that's potentially retiring, that has indicated. We have one that will reach his mandatory age at the end of December, and will have to go by the end of January.
Okay.
Both of those are in administration.
Okay, thank you.
And then to further complicate the overtime issue within the agency, military leave, on any given occasion, we may have 4 gone. On-job injury, we may see as many as 3 or 4. Family Medical Act, or family medical leave, on any given occasion, we can see as many as 3 or 4. Turnover because of individuals possibly being released from the agency, or those who are on administrative suspension pending issues that may have evolved, we can see upwards, and at one time, just recently, we were down about 25.
On the point we're on the overtime, it looks like y'all are slated, the police department is slated for the year to spend about $1.2 million in overtime. That's a pretty big hunk as far as, of your total salaries, percentage of your salaries. I was just noticing in the patrol department, it's about 12% of your total salaries in overtime.
Right.
And I understand that you can't prevent it all, but it appears to me that for $1.2 million, you could hire, 4 or 5 more police officers, and their job to be to fill in for whoever's missing, instead of having to pay time and a half in overtime to some of the officers to be able to do that. And, this has been a concern for several years as far as overtime in the police department. I understand some of what you're saying, but to me, it still looks like if you could hire a couple more people, you'd be better off as opposed to paying all that overtime.
I have that kind of broken out as to, and the chief mentioned short-term overtime, and it is over the course of time, I guess, of a life of an officer, it would be short time. But we have 9 officers that were hired that just got cut loose to where they can start patrolling the streets just last week. Those 9 officers were hired last November. We have a process where we have to give them a civil service exam, and then it takes several weeks for us to get that exam back. Then we have to give them a physical agility test. They go through an extensive background investigation, and it's not just the 9 that we hired. We're looking at doing 40 or 50 background investigations, which takes quite some time. Then they go through an orientation process to become familiar with our department, how it works, all of that. 10-week academy that they have to go through, And then they go through a field training officer program where they will actually ride with somebody for 16 weeks before they're cut loose. You're looking virtually at when you say hiring somebody to fill those spots, you're looking at 10 months before we can hire an officer and put him on the street to work on his own. And as the chief said, most of the time, by the time that 10 months has transpired, we've already lost 3 or 4 officers, either through retirement, through terminations, or just voluntary resignations, whatever the case may be. So it's like we're almost always behind the curve because of budgetary. You can't hire more than what's in the budget, but we always stay behind the curve, and because of the length of time it takes to get an officer on the street from the time they're hired. We've got to put officers out there answering the call, so the overtime is going to go up. And we run the special details. You know, we've been bombarded with shootings and shots fired calls and things along that line over the course of the past year and a half. So we're running some special details. Court is one facet of overtime we can't avoid. 2/3 of our department are not on duty when court is in session. So they get overtime when they go to court. So all of those things kind of factor into why our overtime is so high.
And some of it, as you see up there, as far as the minimum staffing is concerned, that's only 30-something% of our overtime that's used. As the chief just alluded to, court and many other things up there, a lot of those things, U.S. Marshals, CRE, and let me see, sex offender, a few other things, those are reimbursables. So that figure you're seeing of 1.2 million, I think the last one I saw was 750. When I actually went back and tried looking into this, there was a substantial amount of reimbursable that came in because of our aligning ourselves with a lot of federal programs that we assign people to in order to get more, I guess you might say, stronger leverage against these people who are committing these crimes in the community, more so than what we're seeing in our state system.
And Chief, I would just guess that in making that determination, salaries and benefits, especially the benefit side of that, play a large role as well when you decide whether or not to use the overtime to handle some of these things as opposed to hiring a new
The benefits play a substantial part in it, and also Ms. Bell can tell you there's a higher rate for public safety personnel per the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System that affixes itself to that overtime when we have to pay that.
And Chief, I gotta say, the thing that concerns me about the chart is that we're working the dog overtime too, with the K-9. So.
K-9s are on call.
He's working overtime too.
I know he gets paid better than us anyway.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, let me ask you all, with respect to your budget, in collaboration with U.S. Marshals, TBI, and FBI, does that affect your budget?
Does it affect our budget?
Yes.
For the most part, most of that's reimbursable. Now, you'll see the effect of it as far as the outlay is concerned, but I think the revenue side is something we need to track also to see that from aligning ourselves and companioning ourselves with DEA, U.S. Marshals, and others there who actually cover that overtime expenditure and reimburse us for it, that it's almost cost negative.
So when we need them, we can get them and we get reimbursed.
That's what I was going to say. When we did our first multi-jurisdictional gang saturation, because we participate in the ATF task force, the U.S. Marshals task force, and the DEA task force, we had U.S. Marshals and DEA agents and ATF agents from all over the state of Tennessee that came into Jackson to help us do that saturation. And we were able to put 50 or 60 officers out on that very first saturation because of our participation in those task forces. And we were only putting 1 or 2 people.
You get reimbursed for it?
We get reimbursed for the overtime. In some of these task forces, like the U.S. Marshals Task Force, they're buying the 2 officers that we have assigned to that task force, they're buying them vehicles.
All
So
right.
the vehicles that they're currently driving will come back to us to be able to put in the fleet or be able to put in our other special operations.
So we don't like to announce the bad guy all that's happening, but I hope it's happening.
It is happening, sir.
Okay.
And I want to just say one thing to Councilman Wallace. one of the things that we always try to do to offset some of this 10-month time frame is every time we give a civil service exam, we branch out, we reach out to other departments. If we can get an officer that has already been to the police academy and is already certified, that cuts roughly 2.5 months off of the amount of time that we have before we can put them on the street. So that is a goal of ours. We don't always get quality applicants, but I think in the group of the 7 that the chief just talked about, I think we've got 3 that are already certified. So they will not have to go to the academy.
In that group,
Which is a cost to us as well, at $3,000 an officer, and that doesn't include outfitting them or anything. That's a savings to us as well.
in that group of which these 7 were hired, 87 started, and 7 finished the process as far as going through the physical proficiency, background investigation, and other aspects of the program with our department.
Chief Lippert.
I understand what we're doing with the saturations, and I'm fully behind that. I guess my question and concern is that we had a reduction in personnel in the gang unit. How does that affect the day-to-day in between the multi-jurisdictional saturations?
It's not affecting it because what we're doing is asking other divisions to submit personnel from their staffing regiment to shore up these places where we're short.
Okay.
Chief, this budget that you're presenting to the council, in your highest opinion, do you effectively think that this is what you need for crime fighting and safety, public safety in the city of Jackson?
I don't ask got to answer that. It's never enough. Never enough.
There you go.
Councilman Buchanan, that's a tough one to say. Now, do you know to be desirous of being a proactive police chief and a proactive agency, we would advocate getting all we can. I mean, we're set here with the city of 68,000 roughly, but yet when people want to levy these innuendos against us as far as highest crime rate and all this, they always put us categorically in that parameter of being a city of 100,000, if my memory serves me
Well,
correctly.
let me help you out.
Yes, sir.
With this operating budget that you're presenting,
We're
will this
gonna make it
clean the
happen,
streets
sir.
up?
Sir,
With this operating budget that you're presenting, will this effectively clean the streets up?
we will continue to work as we have, sir.
Okay? I'm finished.
I just have one question. In regards to one of the major tools that you all have is the aviation unit. Where do we stand with that as far as how many officers do we have capable of flying the helicopter? Where do we stand as far as parts for helicopter and that kind of thing? Are we in good shape with that now after the crash, or?
We are in good shape now. We presently have 2 officers that are capable of flying this helicopter. As far as parts and so forth, we had the old hull of the one that crashed and one other. We were able to cannibalize those and able to inventory those parts that could have substantial use to us. Also, we have been contacted by State Surplus, which as far as Department of Defense reutilization is concerned, and made aware of the fact that there may be other helicopters that are getting ready, as you may have seen the article concerning our unit out here, aviation unit with the National Guard, as far as the change of some of the helicopters and so forth, and certain ones that are going to be moving out, we may have the eligibility for another helicopter that we can bring into our fleet. One thing concerning this particular helicopter, when we were able to get it through state surplus from another sister agency, I won't say Hawkins County, I believe it was Sheriff's Department, and we were told it was airworthy. It was nowhere near being airworthy. We wanted to go to East Tennessee and fly it back. I understand that it never would have made the flight back, so it has impacted us greatly in order to get this up and operational. We had to have the engine completely overhauled to make it airworthy, which was 50,000 plus that we weren't expecting to have to do. As far as what we call the night sun, the light that's on the helicopter, we were able to take parts and pieces of others and actually build one ourselves that was functional. The FLIR system that actually shows the heat indicator or signature of something we might be looking for. We're presently waiting for that. It's in the manufacturer process right now, and we're waiting for receipt of it and put it on the helicopter.
Does this unit hit the air every day?
Yes, sir. It has been since it has been back up and operational. I don't think I've I don't think there's a day that, I know I discussed it with my wife here lately, I don't think I've seen a day that it hadn't been up there. The guys are out and making full use of it, and we're definitely going to see the impact by having it up there.
Is it possible to use a civilian pilot as opposed to a fully licensed law enforcement agent? Is that something we could look at?
Councilman, I don't know. Under the guidelines that, of how we get those helicopters, we're not allowed to fly any non-law enforcement personnel in those helicopters. So I don't know if a civilian pilot, if those guidelines would prevent a civilian pilot from doing that or not.
I
I think.
think you said you may be getting another one. It could be something you might look into to see if it would say you'd be less expensive to have a civilian pilot.
Well, we've got two pilots, and we've got several officers that is just kind of a side job, I guess. They're trained as observers. So we always try to have, we always will have a pilot and at least one observer. The observer has to go through training that allows him to be able, in case something happens to the pilot, he will be trained to land that helicopter safely, hopefully. But as the chief alluded to earlier, one of the reasons we moved Investigator Hopper from Metro Narcotics over to aviation, Sergeant Wiltshire is actually eligible to retire this month. And him being a helicopter pilot, you know, he could have some very lucrative job offers out there. A civilian pilot does make more than what we pay our pilots.
Okay.
So,
never mind. One last question. On the school resource officers, that of course is coming entirely out of the budget now, have you taken those people and put them back in the budget in a different?
They're in patrol, so.
Okay, any other questions from council on the police department budgets? We want to, council want to go ahead and look at capital at the same time rather than calling these, so we can cut them loose. Maybe let them get back to work. Let's look at the police department capital then, Chief, if you would, and just kind of. Is there any item in your capital that you want to?
the only item that I would point out is under the helicopters and repairs and upgrades, that $330,000 carryover. That is for that FLIR system that we're talking about that's being built. We're not, the company is fairly certain at this point that they will not be able to deliver it by June 30th. They're hoping for early July. So that money was in this current budget. So it is being carried over to the next budget year in capital in order to pay it out of the next budget year.
Okay.
Other than that, if you have any questions about anything, there's, we're replacing some tasers. There is one cost on there for our radio IP software and server. That's the system, because of the, all of our computers currently run Windows XP. Radio IP is the system that runs the computers in all of our cars. It will not work, as of this year, it will not work with Windows XP. So their new version will not. So we're going to have to upgrade to the version that works with Windows 7, since Windows XP is no longer supported by Microsoft, and we're going to be purchasing a server that will support that software as well. The vest, every 5 years our officers have vests that expire, so we have to replace the vest, and we've got vests in there for new hires. The radar units, we had 26 radar units that went out to the patrol division was checking out on a daily basis to do traffic enforcement in support of our traffic division. Most of those units were very, very old, and we sent them back to the company. They could not repair them, so we do have 10 in there for replacement this year.
Do they come with lawn chairs?
Somehow I knew that was
Yeah, you weren't gonna get by without that.
That is a feature, yes. No, it's not.
I had a question, if I may.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Just so we know, and so the public knows, Chief, can you explain how the laptops are gonna help the gang enforcement?
Currently, the gang enforcement team, unfortunately, one of the duties that they all have desktops in their offices. The only divisions right now, or the only division right now, or 2 divisions that have computers in their car, which most of those consist of laptops, is patrol and traffic. The gang unit, one of their responsibilities has become community awareness. They are going out several times a week, presenting to civic groups, schools, whatever, church organizations. They don't have their own equipment, their own laptops and projectors and things along that line. They don't have their own equipment over there in order to be able to put their presentations together, go in and set up, and so they're always having to rely on borrowing from somebody else.
So more of a communication function as opposed, I didn't know if
That,
there were
it's
reports or something like that.
it's gonna support their community awareness of gangs portion.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from council?
The 10 additional tasers, how many will that give us?
The 10 additional will put us up to 36, I believe.
And I'm assuming they've been useful in their purpose?
Definitely. I haven't been able to look at the numbers yet as to how much suspect and officer injuries have gone down, but just reading the reports that I do on a daily basis, I would almost be certain that there's a pretty good decrease in those injuries.
Okay. Council good? Okay, thank you, gentlemen. very
Thank you,
much.
Mayor, Council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could be next, could be next. Fire next.
Now, if we could get Chief Stewart to come up and address the fire department, which is on page 6 of the ordinance.
Good morning.
Morning, guys.
We have drastically cut our capital, we've cut our operations, tried to go along with the other departments and do what we needed to do. But if you have any questions for us.
We have any firefighters retiring this year?
We've got 2 retiring at the end of June and probably 2 more by the end of the year.
Got the, same question for you I have for the police department as far as overtime is concerned. Like your budget is for about $214,000 overtime for the year, which is not as much as the police department by a long shot, but nonetheless, that's still a pretty high percentage. Are y'all monitoring that the best you can? Same question there, so it looks like you could hire, some more some more firemen as opposed to paying that much in overtime.
Well, it's like them, we just hired 5, and we've got 4 leaving for the end of the year. And if we do not work overtime, then you're gonna be talking about shutting down trucks. And we don't.
Yeah, I understand that you're gonna have to have some overtime. My only concern is the amount of overtime that you've got seems to be not, terribly excessive, but a little higher than I would expect it to be.
We do watch it as closely as we can, but we're just like the police department. We have OJIs, family medical leave, people retiring.
In fact, this year's budget is actually cut. This year's budget is that we're going to come in lower than what we actually projected on it. I think at 215. This year, I think we'll be about 75% by the end of the year on the overtime.
The total fire is down 4.52%, and then, of course, they don't have any grants And if you want to look at their capital while we're here, it's a very small portion, and I'll let Chief Stewart or whomever explain what is there. It's not really that much.
Chief, what would be your full complement of firefighters?
Right now,
Total.
on the line, operations, 168.
168. And that puts you at each station on each shift, whether you have four or
It
five?
varies, Mayor.
It
Yeah, it
varies
varies as to how many
depending
days.
on the kind of equipment that's each
That's
each
correct.
station? Okay.
One station, like Station 3 or Station 6, we've got 4 people at those
Right.
stations each.
Okay. Okay.
But this, I would like to say, this is the first time that I can remember that we're actually at the full 168 on operations. But again, by the end of next month, that's
It'll
going
be
to
back
drop.
down, yeah,
Yes, sir.
because of retirement.
Yes, sir.
As far as locations for fire stations, we're comfortable, we've got the city covered pretty well now.
We do. We could probably use 2 more stations. But,
Okay, I didn't ask that question. Go ahead.
no, I'm serious, as time goes by, and if we ever do annex again, we could probably use 2 more. But right now, we overlap, and we can cover what we got.
If we had the money to build 2 more stations tomorrow, approximately where would you be thinking that we needed them?
I think we need one out Christmasville Road
Yeah.
in that area. And probably, yeah, close to the airport. But we also have an automatic response agreement with the county. So if anything happens where they need help or we need help, it's there.
Out towards the airports, the city, I guess the city limits do go out there somewhere, don't they?
Just thinking possibly in the future,
Thank you.
residential.
What about our fire trucks?
We've got one coming in June, and we're really looking forward to it.
Will that be enough?
No, ma'am. But as the budget, I've been told that as time goes by, we'll be able to get some more.
How many more do you think we need?
I've got a big wish list.
Well, just practical terms, maybe.
At least 2 more pumpers.
Chief, is that additional or replacement?
It'll be replacing
Okay.
because of the age of our other ones.
I see.
Really, you don't have a place to park. If you had 3 more, you wouldn't have a place to park them, would you?
Over the,
I mean, additional.
We found a spot.
Park them on a used
Not
car
in the
lot.
stations, yeah.
So how many do we have again right now that are working, that are not in repair?
You mean on the line?
Just how many fire trucks do we have?
ma'am, we have 13 fully operational fire trucks
They're all working, okay.
and 3 in reserve. Now, at any given one time,
More
we
than
could
one
have 1 or
fire.
2 of those down, which we have at this moment because of certain issues. So we have 1 aerial device in reserve, 2 fully engines that's in reserve. But we have 13 pieces of apparatus stationed throughout the city at each one, at different areas in the stations.
So, all of those stations have how many fire trucks? At least one, I'm sure, but.
At least 1.
At least one,
Yes, ma'am.
okay.
Station 1 has 2 fire engines and an aerial truck. Station 2 has 1 fire engine and an aerial truck. Station 3 has just 1 fire engine. 4 has a aerial piece of equipment that works also as a pumper and a fire engine. Station 5 has 2 fire engines and an aerial. Station 6 has 1 piece of engine, and then Station 7 has an aerial device with a tanker.
Okay, at the South Jackson Station, how many fire trucks are there?
2.
2, that's good, because
The
that's a
Quint
large
and,
area.
yeah, the Quint, which is an aerial piece of equipment, and the fire truck,
Okay,
fire engine.
thank you.
What's the age of the 3 trucks that you feel like need to be replaced approximately?
The two trucks that we'll be replacing, well, the one truck that we'll be replacing is one of them is going to be 26 years old.
Makes it an antique, 25 years, makes it an antique.
We've been joking about getting license plates for them, yes, sir.
Is that particular engine in reserve?
Yes, sir. The two that we're going to have to replace immediately are in reserve, but we've got 3 engines right behind it that are going to be, at the end of this year, 24 years of age.
Okay.
One other point, Randy, you made during the break was that we had left out employee benefits in 2 areas. And actually, his administration number will not be down 22% when we put back in the 63,207 administrative benefits that were left out. I don't have the exact number that, but I mean, it looks kind of funny that his administrative is down 22%. And what you pointed out during the break period there, the 2 areas we missed were fire department administration and recreation administration benefits. So I'm just telling you that 63,000 more will be going back in there.
Okay, any other question, council, on the operating budget, fire department? If not, Chief, you got a capital budget we can handle? You will?
Al just had.
I did, you just did the capital, okay, all right. Any other questions, council, on their budget, either operating or capital? Okay, very good, thank you.
Thank you.
The other item of public safety is central dispatch. And if you want to bring
Ananda is on her way.
forth to discuss that, because that one does show a slight increase.
Good morning, Mayor.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
What page your budget out? Guys, 7? Okay. Well, it's not either. Public Works.
The, as you can tell, I don't know if Al's gonna, point out the, salaries. There is an increase in the, salaries due to the finally, maxing out the dispatchers in central dispatch. However, this time we do have one position that still has not been filled. That's in the and then there's one that's in the backgrounding process now to be completed. So that will complete the process for this actual central dispatchers. However, this year we obtained the PBX, which is the primary answering point for the Jackson Police Department. The 2 positions that they had at the police department were moved over to central dispatch. So that in turn put 2 salaries at a different rate of pay into my budget as well. I think that was 60, just a minute.
60-some thousand.
67, I'm sorry, $63,128. And that's including their progression wages because they are new, so they're starting at the very bottom. So that's including their progression for the next fiscal budget year. As well as any other increase, there is not. It's just within the budgets. And then, of course, the benefit increase, that would make the benefits increase as well. However, I did cut and minimize other areas as well as other departments within the city as much as possible. Questions?
I think we probably, Mayor, ought to look at the capital on central dispatch, because that's a pretty large number, and let Lenanda explain that $671,000 item.
The $671,000 is a continuation from the capital last year. Due to the radio towers, this money was appropriated and set aside for the tower, the north tower. And we went ahead and moved this money over to this year's budget because of the simple fact, come December the 31st of this year, the city will be obtaining the Crystal Lake Tower, which is located out south. JEA will be abandoning that tower, and due to the fact that we have microwaves and radio equipment at that north tower, data radio and everything at the south tower, we will be taking possession of that tower and the equipment that's on the inside, the utility bill, the generator, the UPS. It will just become an additional site. It's not as large as the north tower, but it is still an operational tower that we have to take care of beginning December. So that money's been appropriated. As you well know, we've not done any upgrades to the current radio system, the 800. We're still on the 800 megahertz system. So this money has been left in appropriation for that if there's any type of failure to the 800 megahertz radio system. Integrated Communications out of Memphis, Tennessee is still doing a wonderful job at buying us parts and pieces when they find them, and to put them up on the shelf or to go out there and do a replacement. However, it is getting to the point that when we do a replacement, something else has a tendency to go wrong because of the age and the usage of the radio system. So they're treating it very delicately, and they're working on it as much as they can, and they are replacing parts as need be. And when they can find an 800 megahertz that is cutting down and going to a new digital system that will fit ours, they're asking me, and we're buying pieces as needed.
And I think, if you don't mind me interjecting, Nanda,
Go ahead, sir.
this is an area where we're going to be seeing capital requests for ongoing years. This is not going to go away, and we're going to have to address it.
Technology.
On the radio
Ever
towers,
changing.
we'll be taking over. If we incorporate that into our operating budget, the annual expenses for that?
No, I did not.
Is
I
that
did
just
not.
not gonna be a big number where we need to add that, or?
When we sit down and talked about the budget, I said if this money here that we had put into the capital could not be used and we could not find replacement parts, and I had to use that money to pay for anything out at the south tower, then permission was granted to do so. I didn't appropriate any utility bills or anything of that nature.
That's
Now I
gonna be an
have
ongoing
that.
expense. That probably should be in our regular operating budget as opposed to coming out of capital outlay.
I was gonna throw 10,000 into that, just for the simple fact of what JEA, the phone, what they have told me that's out there.
Yeah.
Now, they have like a continuing contract on the UPS and the generator, where that's something I'm not gonna need because our city takes care of that currently out at the north tower. So that's gonna be something that the city would, assume the responsibilities of the generator services out there at the south tower when we take that over on December 31st.
Shouldn't we add that in our operating budget? I
Well, that's up to the council now. We went through and tried to cut expense in line with all the other departments. If we have missed something that is a necessity, it would be the time to add it onto the sheet that Karen has.
So we have a tower with no way to operate it as far as utilities. Is that what you're saying? May not be a bad idea, Karen, if you will, in your long list to add some operating cost to
Yeah, we'll give her
legitimately
$7,000,
operate that tower.
I know in 2013, I did not exceed my budget. In 2014, I'm closer than what I was in 2013, but that has a lot to do with the simple fact of employees and the salaries that have come into play. So in 2013, I did not exceed my budget. This year, I'm still below at this time. I think I'm right at 72%. So I'm still below my budget, so that's where, but next year, with us maxing out on salaries, yes, there won't be any extra, I'm assuming. And I did go over my operating budget this last year, but that was because of the North Tower and the conditions that we had at the North Tower and what we had paid for insurance purposes at the North Tower and the money that we got back for that. So I did exceed that, I believe, in 2013 for operating purposes.
On the new tower, they're just deeding that over to us, we're not paying them for it?
No, sir.
They're just, okay.
They built that new south tower out there on Norton Hill, so they're moving everything, all of their equipment over to the new tower. And at some point,
It's a freebie. They don't want it.
Where's the old?
we don't either.
I mean, where's the old tower?
The
one
old
that we're
tower is
getting, where?
located off of Severs Road
Seekers, okay.
at Norton Hill. You turn on Severs Road and then you turn
That's
into a
out in the county,
driveway of a
right?
residence.
That's
and-
out in the county.
Yes, sir. Oh, and it's way out in, yes, sir. And you go way back in the woods and, yeah, it's,
Lovely place.
it is.
If it's in South Jackson, it's gotta be lovely. All right, okay.
Mayor, if I hear
Any-
you right, you'd like Karen, Sam, and I to look.
Yeah, if you
with
would, just
Lenanda.
jot that down as an option as we go into second reading. I don't think we need to do anything more than make a note of that and let the council know recommendation at the,
And the utilities is something that I can get from JEA as far as a yearly
okay.
estimate for that, so what they have.
Okay, very good. Any questions, any other questions from council as far as central dispatch? Okay, thank you very much.
Sir, thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor, if you'd like to continue then, page 7 in the ordinance gets into the areas of planning
Mm-hmm.
and other public works type, I'll leave it up.
You guys ready to go? Stan, Scott, y'all, okay. One of you jump in the chair.
Yeah, I think Stan would be
We'll
first.
move right along. Since when are you in public works? Stan?
Our budget pretty much is the same as you normally see. We don't, a lot of things don't very much change in our budget. We try to keep in line and try to discount where we can, but our budget is pretty lean and pretty streamlined now. The only increase you'll see in the planning budget, which is 700, is the copier and duplicator expense, and the only reason it's shown as an increase is because this year we took on the expense of this work group copier, so it's being used by multiple departments, but instead of having that money split across different departments, they moved basically the expense of that copier into our budget. So that's why you see an increase, so that we can cover the cost. But that's not just our copier, that's shared by other departments.
That's on page 34 in your hardbound book with all the detail. I think you got a, what, Stan, a 48% increase, but it's only $2,000 really.
That's right.
Stan, yeah, we're showing on a 0.75% decrease. Can you give us just very quickly the items in your department that are reimbursable, for example, doing planning for the county, the MPO, just a quick overview.
Yes,
there.
sir. If you'll follow those pages, the next account you see on page 35 is 705. That's the MPO, our Metropolitan Planning Organization. That's the money that we are reimbursed through the state for doing transportation planning, and that basically covers some of our hours that are spent on transportation things. We get reimbursed for that. Some of our expenses, office and publishing and things like that we do as related to transportation, we receive reimbursement for that. So that's a grant that is reimbursable for things that we do. The 706, well, actual 707 here is your next one. That is the SPR, which is the rural part of our transportation planning. It just covers the rest of the county because we do the transportation planning for all the counties. So the area inside the urban area is covered by the MPO grant. The part outside the urbanized area is called SPR. So it covers the entire county through that, and that is reimbursable also.
Go backwards there, Stan, on the 705.
Yes.
Is that reimbursed from the county? Professional services particularly is what I was looking at.
That is reimbursed to us through the state.
Oh, that is from the state also?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
705 and 706 both come through TDOT, and our reimbursements for transportation planning that we do for the entire county.
So that you do it for the county, but the state reimburses you as opposed to the county. I guess it was throwing me off a little bit.
Yes, we do the transportation planning for all the county as a part of the Metropolitan Planning Organization. And so what some counties and cities do is they'll have a separate rural, what they call a rural planning agency that will do what they consider the part outside the urbanized area, and have a separate MPO for the rural part and all that. But we do it all within the body of our MPO. So our MPO does the urbanized area and the rural. So
Okay, my question is, if the state reimburses for what gets done in the county, why don't they reimburse for what we do in the city?
Well, they do.
Oh, they do?
That's what the 705 is. The 705 is the part that's inside the urbanized area, which would be the city.
Okay.
707 is the part that's in the county.
Okay.
So they do both.
Thank you.
Okay, any, Stan, anything in capital that's worthy? Okay.
We don't have any capital items, and I do have some other accounts that's up under our department if you want me to just go through those.
Okay, yeah, go ahead and finish out your
The 706, which is not in the budget, is the money that sits out there that's tied to that earmark that we've got concerning the southern bypass, but we're not programming any money in there because that project is held because the state doesn't want to proceed with design, because once they do design, then they have to basically take on the project, and so it's held at the environmental stage and all that's been complete. So that's no money program for that. I've done 707. You've also got under our department, you've got Keep Jackson Beautiful, Liberty Gardens, and the Jackson Tree Board, as well as a small account that has to do with our Board of Zoning Appeals members that is a $300 expense, but nobody is wanting to take any money right now, because if they take money, they have to go through the ethics stuff and file all their disclosures and things, and they said the money's not worth it going through all the trouble. So that's there, but we haven't been spending it, but we program it just in case one of the board members decides they want to be paid. So all those areas have not changed drastically. Of course, Liberty Gardens operates around donations. They program money, but if they don't receive the money in donations, then they can't spend it in expenses. So it's a revenue and expense line item department. Some of the other departments, the amounts have not changed. They pretty much carry out the normal activities and projects that Keep Jackson Beautiful does, which is the Earth Day and the things that they do, chipping of the green, those expenses, and then Tree Board has some planning activities that they do. And again, these departments receive a little bit in donations, and they use that to do some of these activities too.
Okay. Any questions of Stan on any of those areas? Okay, if not, thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
Next item, Mayor, would really be Tom Winbush in building and housing codes.
Okay, I think we can get Tom maybe before, and maybe Scott. That'll be our goal anyway. Shooting for adjournment 11:30 for lunch, if that's okay with council.
Mayor, council, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
What section?
Given a number to meet on my building and housing departments with the help of a good eraser, sharp pencil, and the help from Dave Ralston, and transferring a little money out of building into housing. I did make that number.
35.
Yeah, he's down in both areas of building and housing codes. But if you have any questions as to his involvement in the environmental situations and
Both of those show a reduction, 0.4 and 0.568. Tom, how about your reduction in the housing codes? Is that a little help with
Well,
Dave?
basically, in housing, the only way I could meet that budget number was the $50,000 that Dave Ralston was
Through,
giving
okay.
from a grant he had.
Okay. All right. So that's why, okay. Go ahead.
The question I had was in the, I guess in the housing code enforcements. in the salaries and employee benefits. Looks like year-to-date salary is 206, and we're only budgeting 213. Is there a reduction in employees there, or?
No, there's no reduction at all in
Oh.
employees. I don't know that maybe last year that the amount for salaries might have been a little higher than what was necessary.
Well, I guess I'm just looking at what's actually been spent year-to-date. That would be for 10 months, and if you annualize that out, that'd be about 250,000, what would it be? We only budgeted 213. Al might want to look at that. And the other question I had was on the employee benefits. That doesn't look like the regular 40 or so percent. It's being budgeted.
So,
Now, I don't know if
Randy,
you
you're
can answer that
questioning-
question without going back and looking at it.
You're questioning the 213 that Tom has budgeted for FY15, which is down 24,800.
No, I'm on the 41,710,111 on page
Yeah.
36.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I'm questioning the salary amount of being the year-to-date's 206. If you annualize that, that's around 250. But we're only budgeting 213 for next year. If there's no changes in the number of employees there, we may be under budget in there for some reason or another.
We'll check, but those numbers that was given to me for a number that would work for the employees, plus there's two that they're grant ends, and we're still keeping those. And if they pass, get their certification, then also their salaries will bump up just a little bit.
Okay.
So we'll check that, make sure.
Okay, well, what I'm saying is it looks like it's not budgeted enough
Right.
Enough,
for that.
yeah, Randy's going
And then the
the
same
other
thing on the
Right.
benefits. It looks like the benefits is off a little bit.
Okay, we will
Any
take a look
questions?
at that.
Okay, any other questions or comments from council? If not, Tom, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
I think Scott has basically the rest of those items.
Yeah, let's,
Capital.
I don't think you have that much in.
What do you have
For
in capital, Tom?
Have one truck, some chairs, 2 typewriters.
Okay, can you do without a chair? No, that's okay.
No, those ladies are complaining quite a bit.
Mr. Chairman, while he's looking for capital, I want to say to your staff, and particularly Tom in the building department, for the fine job on answering the call for action, for turning down the dilapidated housing and enforcing these codes.
Well,
We still got a ways to go,
Well,
but
yes, sir.
you're coming on. When, they say when a dog bark, he always bark, but he never give credit, so I'm gonna give credit.
I do appreciate
Credit is
that.
due.
And,
The mayor accused me of barking all the time, so I'm gonna give credit to.
You need
you know,
a
it's,
radio shop.
are we where I'd like to be on all the houses? No. Or making it work, doing the best we can. It's kind of like the other night, I asked my wife, would you fix me a jam sandwich? She came in there and slammed 2 pieces of bread and said, can you make this work? Well, it's not what I looked for, but that's what I got to make it work. I didn't ask for any water.
All right.
I didn't know if I'd need a towel to dry that off.
Okay, all
I
right.
just have one.
Go ahead.
Typewriters?
Yes, because on our envelopes that were all this, these letters
They make
meant.
typewriters.
Oh, yeah, they still have them. We have some forms that stuff had to be typed on there, 3 pages, have 2 copies and original, they still type. And I've got one up there, if I have to try to work on it one more time, it'll be with a hammer. It's going out one way or another.
I think Tom has a typewriter, personnel has a typewriter. That's
You
the
need
only
a
2 in
computer printer,
ZL.
print
We
3
don't know
copies
why,
of
but
it.
that's the way it is.
Yeah, we still have pencil stuff.
Okay.
Anything else?
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Tom. Thank you. Scott, you wanna come on that, buddy, and see if we can get yours before lunch? I know you've got several that you're gonna be dealing with, but maybe we can get them.
Just talk fast.
All right, working down that list, the first one that you'll see that I'm responsible for is street lighting. And I guess that is the one that we actually had an increase budget-wise, just because our street light budget's controlled by the energy rates that GAA uses, and then also as we've installed additional lighting
throughout the city, the lease fee that we pay them to maintain our lights and to finance our lights throughout the city, that budget has went up. If there's no questions on that one, that is why that one has went up. From there, we have stormwater management. That is Wendy Braxton Ryan in our department. That's the management of the MS4 permit with the state, all the public participation and public announcements and things that go along with the minimum measures that's required by the state that the city does to stay in compliance with that permit. That's a permit given because we're a certain population size, and that's that program, if there's any questions about that. From there, street maintenance and street, going down to traffic signs. And that's page 42 on our thing.
And it's also a decrease on, the only increase that Scott had, like he said, was in the street lighting, and that's a factual type thing.
Yeah, traffic sign department, like I said, we've reduced that as we were asked to, and, you know, that covers all the signage throughout the city. Traffic signalization actually had no change. It's similar to, it's not exactly the same as the setup with the street lighting because we own our traffic signals, but it's greatly energy based. There's no employees in there, there is some contractual services, but that's the maintenance of our traffic signal system. That one didn't decrease, but it didn't have a change either. And then within the city engineering department, we've made cuts to reduce that budget as well. And then lastly, at the bottom, which is on page 45 of the workbook there, is stormwater operations, and we've reduced that budget as well.
Scott, not a question, just a comment. Just wanted to thank you for the work that you've done in making yourself available for the neighborhood meetings, especially in the Ridgemont area. We actually have a constituent from the Ridgemont area. Mr. Gunther is here, and as well being responsive in installing a light in that neighborhood. So we want to thank you for that. A lot of times you just get the negative part of that, but we're very appreciative.
And I received a very nice letter from that association too. It was handwritten.
Right, I received
really
one
nice.
too.
It was
So,
nice.
yeah, thank you again.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the operating budget for those departments? If not, we can go on to capital. Scott?
All right.
Yes.
Okay. Starting there with the street resurfacing and projects, I made note with Karen the other day, the Royal Street line item that's in there that you see second there, we have completed Royal Street. I think that was from an earlier version when that may have been rolled over for next year, but basically we're going to have in that pavement management line item there at the top, we're going to have $2 million, a little over $2 million there. The full number will wind up being $2,075,920, but which is very similar to the number you get if you add $1,970,000 and the $150 from the Royal Street. But we completed the section of Royal Street, so that'll be a change that we'll make for the second reading. So pavement management, roughly $2 million.
What did we have this past year, Scott? Did we have about the same amount
We did, we did. Well, we actually had somewhere in the neighborhood of a little over 3 million. And the reason why that is too is because we have an additional $1 million that's kind of separated out for some improvement projects we're going to be working on. If you'll see there, Christmasville Road to Sand Pebble. That project there is to try to get and rebuild the shoulder. If you come out of the pilot on Sand Pebble at the new pilot station, and trucks are trying to make lefts, they all have to get in the same driving lane. We're going to rebuild the shoulder there, so as a truck that wants to head toward Memphis, he can make a left out of Pilot and go on and get in the far right lane, continue all the way up to the interstate ramp and head toward Memphis without getting bogged up with any of the other traffic. For the amount of money, for the benefit there, we felt like that was a project worth going on and doing. We'll basically take the gravel back down that's under the shoulder and beef that up with enough pavement to handle a truck and try to get that improvement done this year. From there, Old Humboldt Road to the bypass, we're going to try to pave a portion of Old Humboldt Road, and if you're coming from the bypass to Forest Point, with the development there kind of on hold, we have been doing some plans for when that does develop. More specifically, there's a culvert there near Forest Point that is got quite a bit of deterioration, and we're going to try to replace that and do enough widening of that culvert when we replace it to kind of plan for some additional improvements there. So that's we put that down as an improvement project as well. Orwell Road from Windhurst to Stonebrook, we are going to pave that all the way to the bypass. But the improvement part of it would be to try to get double left turns on the Murray Guard side and the Orwell side, which we're hoping will help stack those left turners side by side and allow for Murray Guard and Stonebridge or Stonebrook to allow left turns in and not back up into the bypass. It gets really congested in there. Then the last little improvement there, we put 60,000 Union Street improvements right in front of the farmers market. We're going to try to reconfigure that at Union Street where it tees in, kind of an odd intersection in front of the farmers market. We're going to try to improve that to make it a little more fluid for cars to come down through there, and then also give Nona at the farmers market the ability to block off that section of College Street in between the sheds to utilize that for the farmers market. So that's a little improvement. She requested, she's had a lot of trouble with traffic down there, and so we put that there in there as well. And then lastly, we've started on the James Buchanan Bridge project. We brought that contract to you a couple months ago, and we're planning on being about halfway completed with that by the end of June. And so that $201,000 is the completion. The money will roll forward into the next year to complete that project.
Okay, any questions, Scott, on those particular projects, or any questions about
the following projects you see there, I think you're familiar with. They're all state funded with city match type projects. You've got East Chester Phase 2. The Highland at Dedrick is the roundabout project that you've been hearing about, which we're moving forward with the design. We selected the consultant just last month for that. F.E. Wright improvements, the design is still moving forward on that. And then the Highland Avenue sidewalk project is a grant we received, a multimodal grant.
is to get sidewalks along Highland in between Skyline Drive and Radio Road to make that connection for people to be able to walk down through there. And it's, all those numbers are shown with their match portion. If you have any questions on those, I can explain.
You didn't have to do any capital for your ADA sidewalk?
Not at this point. The crew that the mayor's assigned is still working in Bemis. We have, we're still, as we pave streets with sidewalk, we'll be doing some ADA improvements along in conjunction with that, like we've been doing for years. And they're going back up there in the pavement management. We are looking at Lambeth Boulevard as kind of a big item to repave this year. And depending on the progress that they make, we may try to help with some sidewalk improvement on Lambeth while we're doing a kind of a full rebuild of Lambeth.
Okay, any other questions from council for Scott? Okay, Scott, thank you very much. Al?
The only other
Council
two
has
areas-
suggested lunch, so why don't we let the other department heads
Okay.
that let them know their positioning after lunch. Who do you show as next?
Well, the only other two we missed on the Public Works was the Public Service Complex,
Yeah.
which is Kathleen.
Right.
I turned it off again.
Okay.
And
Good time to turn it off.
That's right. We're leaving.
it should come back here.
City Garage.
And City Garage, those are the only two. And they're both, as you can see, reductions.
Okay, all right.
Street.
You got the street department in there.
Yes.
Okay, when we come back, why don't we start with, Tony, we'll start with you, and then go to the street department. And then into public services and H&S, Kathleen, okay? Okay.
How long is the break, sir?
Till 1:00.
We're going to declare a lunch recess until 1 o'clock. Thank you
You said
very much.
1:30, okay.
Got an hour and a half. Appreciate it. And if council would, if there's no objection, let's call Rodney tied up at the garage. We kind of glance right over him before we adjourn. That's the city garage. And Al, what page is that on?
Good afternoon.
Let's see, what page? Yeah, you got the page for the garage.
And Anita, if you would show that Councilman Cisco is present.
Yes.
41, 42. Public Works, 41, 42.
Right, 41 and 42 is the page number in your detailed budget. And then you can see we've got a one-liner on here for the city garage. And he's down 5%. And I'll either let him present or have you guys and girls ask questions.
Rodney, how bad that 5% hurt you?
Well, it's never good to lose, but I think we're okay. We'll make it.
You're not losing any employees.
No, sir. That's
Everybody
exactly
being
right.
paid the
That's
same
good.
thing.
That's right.
Okay. With all the wonderful fringe benefits that go along with it.
They are great.
Okay.
They really are. The good
Any-
news is, if y'all have questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them. The good news is, and we do have some good news, tomorrow, with if everything lines up, Mars and Venus and all that lines up like it's supposed to, we'll have 3 cars that run on propane tomorrow.
All right.
We got 2 CNG trucks coming. They'll be here, I'm afraid it's gonna be July, but at least they're on the way. So we're excited about that.
See, that was gonna be my question, man. You ruined it for me.
Sir?
So that was gonna be my question. You ruined it for me.
I apologize.
So we are gonna have some propane and some
Propane
some
should
gas.
be online tomorrow afternoon, Council.
What cars are those that run on propane?
What cars?
Yeah, what cars?
3 Dodge Chargers for the police department.
Okay, right, and what about the CNG
CNG will be one F-250 for health and sanitation, and an F-450 with the grain bed for health and sanitation.
And Rodney, you know, we've worked on this. And
Oh, yes, sir.
with the mayor's help as well.
And Councilman
And
Wallace, yes,
Councilman
sir.
Wallace for some time. Do you have any idea how much this will save us going
What
forward?
I know for sure on propane, we bought propane the other day, we paid $1.61. And we bought gasoline this morning, we paid $2.93.
Okay.
I know that for sure. And I really don't believe gas is gonna go much more than $3, but who knows? So we'll save about $1.40 a gallon.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
That's good news.
And the natural gas ones, where are we gonna be fueling those?
It will fill up the CNG trucks, natural gas at Jackson Energy on Royal.
Okay, so.
They have a quick fill.
Okay.
So we're looking forward to that too.
And we've got our station at the fuel pumps for the
Yes,
other.
sir. It's
okay,
ready to
already
go. Got it
installed.
working, turned it on Friday.
Okay, any questions or comments?
Before you get
Councilman
away,
Wallace?
the salaries charged to other departments, is that where y'all bill your fees for?
Yes,
That's not,
sir.
okay.
If I work on a city vehicle, we charge to that department, whatever it is.
Are we still working towards getting to break even for the garage?
I'd
or-
love to do it, but I haven't heard any more about it, to be honest with you.
Okay, well, you're hearing about it,
I
I wish
told
y'all
the
do
mayor one time, and
that.
I'm not being smart with it, Councilman, let me make 10%.
Oh, do
I'm
what?
just saying, we'll buy our own trucks.
Oh, well, for us to see how cost-effective the garage is, we really need to be billing all those services out. And, you know, I brought that up last year. I'd like to
Yes.
see that happen and
Yes.
work in that general direction.
Some cities do that, as a matter of fact. A lot of them do what we do. Some don't charge labor at all. It's all over the board, whoever you talk to. But anyway, we're gonna play with the
Okay.
cards we're dealt.
Okay. Any other questions from council or comments? If not, thank you very much,
Yes,
Rodney.
sir. Thank y'all.
That's one of those areas the city council push.
Now, Mayor, we've got the
Street department.
department, and I think Buddy,
Buddy, come on up.
he was here in person.
These guys are deputy superintendents in the street department. One's in charge of construction, the other in charge of maintenance, and various and sundry things.
What page is that on?
Rick starts on page, 38, 39,
Yeah.
very bottom 38, SSA.
Al, you may, or Karen, one, there's still, this particular department is now operating within the confines of our gasoline tax that comes back to us. Okay, all right.
And there we've got somewhat of a problem because we keep collecting lesser. The states, for some reason, can't explain it, their revenues are down in their gasoline taxes.
So in essence, this department is self-sustaining as far as the gasoline tax collected by the city. And they're pretty much restricted to those funds. If they continue to go down and we still have a demand for services, then we'll have to address that at a later time. But right now, they do have a fund balance of, how much? 80-something thousand?
Yeah, about 90,000.
Okay, all right.
We're hoping that we'll have to completely wipe out.
Understand, okay. We have been contacted by the state to do some additional cutting on the interstate and the interchanges. Which one of you guys, Percy, where are we on that, and what are you asking them?
I went and looked at all that, and, you know, we can't do anything until the state come back with us with acres, how many acres they want us to cut. I think it's an additional 5 miles to cut. So we're just waiting on the state to get back with us, and then we can go and estimate what it'll cost to do it.
Tell us what we do now on the interchanges and the interchange proximity properties, I suppose. Where do we start, where do we end?
We started mile marker 80, finished at 82 and a half. It's about 2.5 miles of cutting. We do each interchange coming in and going out.
That's between Highland and the bypass?
Right. Well, actually, it started, once you come off of Hollywood, midways till you get to the bypass, then go all the ways up to Highland.
Okay, from Hollywood down, okay. And they want us to extend that to what?
All the way up to 87 Love's truck stop up there.
Okay, so they want to go all the way out to.
Yeah, they complimented him on
on the job that it.
Somebody needs to. Have we got any conversation going with the state? And our regional office has been really good to us over the years, but I know their concern is we're concerned about the 45 bypass as far as cutting and maintaining that strip through our city. Has been any conversation? I haven't talked to them.
They talked to Sam. Best thing about that, the guy that talked to Sam, I think is what he told him, we could renegotiate the contract, so we might be able to comp some of that money we wasn't getting and get us a little bit more money.
Okay.
For what we do now, Mayor, don't we come out in the hole for it?
Yeah, do we?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Karen? So we supplement really the state in maintaining the interchanges and the interstate in our city, basically for aesthetic value, but it is costing us some money.
Yes, but it looks much better when we do it.
Yeah. As we continue though, let me just encourage you guys, and Sam, if you'll work with them, you know, to see if we can't come a little closer to breaking even when we do.
Yeah, because we've been working on the same contract, seemed like 15 years.
Yeah.
I talked with them last week, Mayor, I stressed that point very strongly, that we had to pretty much have to subsidize. And I told him we would not be able to go farther if they didn't pay the full cost.
Okay.
And buy some equipment.
And in defense of the regional office, those contracts are usually taken care of in Nashville, and they get whomever is given the contract. And I don't mind telling you, I've been a little disappointed in the number of times they're cutting and in the quality of cut, and especially in our city where it's most visible. Any questions of superintendents for the street department?
I want to give them kudos for the fine job they're doing on the ADA project and on the ditch maintenance. They're doing a good job.
They are.
The only other thing, Mayor, is if you look at capital, I think they've only got 3 items there.
I think we've got a truck, and tractor, and a small trailer.
Is the tractor going to be a replacement, or will it be an addition to what you have?
I want to make the tractor addition just in case we do pick up that contract, and I can use those other 2 tractors to work on that interstate.
Okay.
And also it's cab, which is safer on the interstate. The one we use, one that he's using now doesn't have a cab on it.
Okay. Okay. Guys, everybody good?
Just refresh my memory on the difference between state street aid, street maintenance, and regular street maintenance.
Well,
State street aid is
I was-
what's funded with the gas tax, and then street maintenance, you'll see an offsetting revenue for the mowing. Street aid is the only one that the city actually puts any funds in. The other 2 have offsetting revenues.
Okay, but why do we not just make one fund? That's what's, is the gas tax
Separate from.
got to be kept
mowing.
separate?
It does.
Yes.
If you'll remember several years ago.
We had a separate fund.
We had a separate fund, which
Okay.
the state allowed us to collapse that fund, but we are required to track it separately, and there is a reserve that's set up for any excess each year that must be used to offset if there are shortfalls. So yes, it must be tracked separately when it is turned into state comptroller.
Okay.
okay. Any other questions? Guys, thank you very much. Al, who we have?
The only other item on Public Works is the Public Service Complex. If we want Kathleen to address anything that's happening there, or
That's basically just the building, right? So it's mainly janitorial and utilities and any of that. Any questions from council on that particular item of the budget? If not, we'll go on to the next one now.
which would be Recreation, and Tony, at
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Hey.
I'll address any questions. The only increase pretty much is 2 departments, is particularly South Jackson Community Center, which is a minimum amount. But the other large increase, of course, is park maintenance. That's a misnomer because they do all the maintenance for all the public buildings. And so what we had to do there was really take a serious look. We increased by $15,000 on the salaries because he is wanting to get a part-time painter in the summers. They do a lot of painting during the spring and the warm weather. And they do a lot at the Sportsplex, Pringles Park, just you name it. It's a crew of about just 14 guys, and we have one office personnel. So we increased them, and also we increased their utility line. All the utilities that are charged to the parks are charged through park maintenance account. Those are, you know, on the corner of Baby Royal where there's a water sprinkler, and they need the water plants, and the park, some of the lights are charged to their utility line, and also that's been increased. And then the other item that was increased in park maintenance was the street light lease, and that's where in our parks, the lighting that takes place with the development of tennis center with some sidewalk lights, trail lights, that will increase. So those are pretty much the major increases.
Tony, I have a quick question, if I may. What programs does Parks and Rec run during the summertime?
Well, we have our summer camps. We have
Right.
2 summer camps, one at T.R. White, which are indoor camps, and one at Westwood. T.R. White, we service about close to 300 kids, and at Westwood, we service about 175 kids.
And are they part of the summer lunch program as
Yes.
well?
Oh, yeah. Yes, definitely.
You said 300 at T.R. White, how many
Yes.
at Westwood?
175. It has been our goal, but, you know, funds are, is to kind of get back and select some parks to do the outdoor parks, but many places, really research parents, kids are not the same breed as we were. When they outdoors, they don't
Right,
like it no more.
Right, yeah,
They want to be in air conditioning.
Right.
So,
My daughter.
You know, the camps where you used to be out all day,
No,
a lot of
they're not.
cities are just pretty much don't run those. pretty
Right.
much.
And does Gillum League come to that as well?
Gilliam League, we have the Gilliam League baseball program over at Centennial, which is still strong with 22 teams, P-ball, coach pitch, as well as player pitch. Then we do the Summer Night League, which is not midnight because they threatened to sue cities for using that name. So we changed
Okay.
it to Summer Night, and we still do the scholarships that are donated from local businesses.
Okay.
We still give 2 $1,000 scholarships. We kind of follow the same criteria that's past years. And it's we've had about 8 teams in it each year for young adults.
Okay, all right.
And, you know, it's going strong.
Thank you very much, Tony.
Any questions, Tony, as far as?
On the golf course, refresh me on that, we're paying $26,000 a year for the company that's managing that. And we've also got budgeted $10,000 for operating supplies. Do you have any idea what that's for?
Sam, you want to?
The 26,000 is in our 20-year contract.
Okay.
We have to pay that just to help them out with things. We have a lot of maintenance things. We cut the roughs for them for the year. We pay to repair all the sprinklers and everything. And that way just, and every time we have to turn around, we got a break in and a broken glass or something, and it gives me an account, I can pay those little things like that when I send them out, when I have to repair.
Okay. So we're responsible for some of the maintenance as well as,
Well, as the mayor says, that's all our land and everything like that, and we really have to go reach these.
One other item I'd like to share with council is the farmer's market. Just to give you an update, you know, we implemented the EBT. We had a grant. There are 55 vendors. Well, there are actually 200 vendors, but only 55 can function at the sites. Out of the 55, 33 signed up to do the EBT, but actually 20 are actually functioning. So that's a good portion. And one of the goals was for poor people to be able to buy affordable food. So the EBT system has been a compliment for the market.
one other question, I guess this is more for Al than it is for you, Tony, but on that employee benefits that we're missing, that's about $160-something thousand.
And that's on Karen's list that we'll go over. We picked it up already.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that gonna eat up all of the extra that we had revenue over expenses for the year?
No,
Or do
like
we
I
have
said,
other
that's-
offsetting items?
It nets out to 62,000, and we were 125,000 ahead, so that puts us at 187,000 ahead.
Okay, I look at that list and say, I'm confused.
I'll go over that
Okay.
at the end of
Okay.
our discussion.
We picked up 60-something thousand, did we not,
Right.
Karen? So we add that to existing
Right.
fund balance. That's right, that's right.
That's the
Okay.
main thing.
Oh, that's right, because that's not, that wasn't taken out of the budget we're looking at as of yet, okay.
The budget, we were in negotiations.
Okay, well, you don't like that.
Okay.
Yeah, on capital, you might as well take a look. Tony's got kind of a long list here, but it's not significant dollars.
A larger one, probably, you see 11,000 for the computer lab at Westwood. That is a functioning lab that we still have a lot of people that pay to utilize it, but the problem is programs and software are 15 years old. And so a lot of times they're complaining, they're slow to get up, so we've got that in to be done again. The restrooms at T.R. White, the lower level, of course, that building is so old, it's old Union's gym. And T.R. White is rented practically, except during the summer, we don't rent it. Almost every weekend, there's some type of function. And it is, it's kind of, you know, and I've been at some function, and it's an embarrassment to go into the old 1960 toilet, you know, stuff, 60s. And it, so we're gonna overhaul that and make it look pretty good down there. That'll really work out for us. And then, of course, we got a rollover for Forest Hill, taking care of Forest Hill. 27th, we have a groundbreaking ceremony up there at Forest Hill Park. And tomorrow, of course, I hope all of you got your invitation for the soccer complex, groundbreaking. And pretty much, those are pretty much. Of course, out at Cypress Grove, a new roof. And when we do this roof, we will not put skylights in it because that is the problem. We repair it, and it leaks around the skylight every time it rains. And in both the men's and women's restroom, it's water everywhere. So, and of course, materials for boardwalk. Unfortunately, had a lady and her husband were walking the other day, and she stepped through the board. Yeah, so, and I think she broke something. So, yeah, it's terrible. So, but other than that.
Tony, is the restroom complete at Liberty Garden?
It is right there. It's there. I'm telling you, that's been an ordeal.
It's been there for
It's
several
there.
months.
I mean, Sam, we can it
Years.
will.
Years.
On the 30th, by the end of the
On
end.
the 30th, we're gonna have to
Function.
Okay.
We're gonna dedicate them?
I was gonna say, we're gonna have a ribbon cutting.
I mean, it's been the longest ordeal to get our restroom built.
Yeah.
The state claims they lost paperwork and all of that kind of stuff. So the good thing about it, once we close it out, then we can apply for more grants. But as long as you have an open grant, you can't apply for other grants. And there's some good stuff out there to apply for.
I have one other question for Sam.
Go ahead, Ken.
Sam, the golf course, what kind of traffic are we having out there?
really good. They broke even last year the first time. So
Okay.
Now, the gentleman, Mr. Pope, met with the mayor while I was sick. I think they had a good conversation. He sat there and make it go. And so it looks like they're gonna make it go. Every time I go out there, there's cars in the parking lot. Matter of fact, I can tell you, man, we're having to dredge out the pond next to the pump house. Because so much sediment's gone in that we've got islands out of it. We're dredging it out now.
And
More places to lose your balls. That's a good job.
It's in good shape.
The greens are the best around
Yeah,
this
they're in
area.
good shape.
The greens are, and that's what golfers like, some good green. Yeah, so they're excellent shape.
I like to hit it straight. But
Yeah. You too.
So you can get to the green. Huh?
Yeah, good luck. Okay.
Get on the
All right. Council good? Okay, thank you,
Thank
Tommy.
you.
Thank you, Tommy.
Now we go to the public buildings mayor and, guess we might as
Okay,
well
we have two. John Robert, you here? Fairgrounds, John Roberts taking the back on Fairgrounds. You might look at his budget. If we have any questions, he can bounce on up here. And
What page is he on, Karen? I'm lost.
He's on 54, 55.
In the recreation section, recreation facilities.
You start right after the med.
come on up, John Roberts. If you have any questions as far as the fairgrounds, its operation, or questions about the budget, we will. John Roberts is here.
I did notice that they're pretty good bit below their budget for the year. Appreciate that.
I like to say we're on a high, lean, high-protein diet, and we like it.
Is that Purina diet?
Neither you show Councilman Dodd is now present.
Yeah. We're under recreation public facilities, page 55. Yellow tab.
Okay, any questions for John Roberts Fairgrounds? If not, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. You get your capital? Okay, all right.
Can we go through that?
One capital, yeah. Good, your capital.
Yes, so capital project that we got, pull that. It's $110,000. What we did was I met with some folks with TVA. Y'all familiar with the Energy Right Solutions projects that TVA was implementing? Well, they come in, they did a lighting survey of the fairgrounds. They looked at all of our lighting, our pavilions, our walkways, our restrooms, our office, our main building. They break all those down into how many you've got, what watts they put out, and then they look at our energy usage for the year. And then they give us options to go fluorescent or go LED. And TVA takes that, they do a study, they take your usage and show you, give you a awesome breakdown of what you're using and what you will actually be saving if you make one of the two switches. And I believe we've opted to go with the LED project. That project is going to pay for itself in 3.5 years, and it is going to more than cut in half our utility costs each and every month.
Fantastic.
So it's something that I'm very excited about, and I know if y'all probably are aware that LED is definitely going to be the wave of the future.
John, are they participating in the cost of those?
Yes, sir. There is an incentive. I believe it's $35,000 that they will pay us as far as an incentive. The rest is out of pocket for us, and that does include a contractor to come in and do the work. So our maintenance guys aren't going to be out stuck trying to.
So we'll bid that out and use a private contractor to actually do the work?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Does that involve replacing the fixtures as well as just putting new bulbs in?
Yes, sir. It involves the fixtures and the bulbs. It's everything, from what I understand, is a turnkey project. And that 110 is a good figure that we budgeted for that. It may come back even cheaper. I've pressed the folks saying, hey, what can we do to actually maximize that incentive so we can get the most back from them? So.
Suppose TVA has their approved contractors for a project like this?
Yes, sir, they do. It was Delta Electric. They're the ones that actually participated with TVA in doing our survey. And then they come in and they recommend the fixtures and the LED. I think Delta cooperates a lot with most of those projects, so they're very familiar with getting in and getting the project done, which will be key for us because of our bookings
schedule.
and such.
Okay, all right, good deal. Questions from council on the capital? Okay, thank you, John Robert.
Thank you all.
You want to go to the Ned next?
Yeah, we can go to Ned. Miss Diane?
Good afternoon.
Where are we? What? 53, okay, good deal, good deal. Okay. Anything jump out about your budget there, Miss Diane?
No, pretty much it's about, I've tried to, the line items are a little different than last year, but the basic budget is about the same. We run pretty tight, actually. We did have a mishap, and so our budget is going a little over, I think, this year. We ended up having to spend money on an air conditioner that we had not planned in the auditorium and are getting one fixed, so that the budget, it was a little over. I think it'll be over. It isn't yet, but I think it will be.
Karen, you want to, was the last year we budgeted half of Pat Alford's salary in that, and
That's true. Ms. Alford retired within the last 2 years, and when she was on staff, she and Diane's salary was split between recreation and the Ned Center. And the reason for that was because a lot of the programs that she ran was children and teen theater, which was a recreational activity rather than an activity of the Ned Center, because the Ned is more promotion of series, events, and those types of things. So upon her retirement, we moved all salaries to the Ned Center, and Ms. Diane and one other employee, the only 2 full-time employees we have, everyone else there is part-time. So-
There's only one other one. We just have one part-time.
And so all of the costs, the benefits, the car lines, all of that have been split between recreation and the Ned, and so now we have moved everything to the Ned.
okay, that's why, obviously, the increase?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
You only have 2 full-time staff?
I'm sorry?
Only 2 full-time?
There's only two, myself and a maintenance. And then I have a part-time that's actually working several hours in order for us to be able to flip the programs, and we're staying pretty busy, so it takes pretty much all of us to flip our programs and be ready for the next group that comes in.
And you got a wonderful advisory board that this
I
council.
do have a
appoints.
great board, and it's, I think we've got 10 members now, maybe 11.
Okay, any questions, any capital, Diane, in your?
I do have 2 capital items.
Okay.
Our ice machine totally went to pieces, and they were, as a matter of fact, the guy that came to look at that was astounded that we were using that ice machine, period, because of all of the mold and everything that was in it. And he did try to fix it, but the very next day it broke again. And so we're going to be without our ice machine during all our camps and everything this year because our budget is, I can't get a new one until July. But we use it, obviously, those 4 weeks, like every day. But then also Theater Guild and other people that come into our building do have receptions, and like their Theater Guild has several shows a year, and they use that for their receptions and their opening night things. And we have art receptions in the gallery, that type of thing. So we're going to be out a little bit until I can get that replaced. But that was one of them. And the other thing is the bulbs for the LED bulbs for our auditorium. In order to replace the bulbs, right now half of them are out. And if you come to any of our programs, I'm sure that you see that, as do our patrons, and they fuss about it being dark. But in order to replace those lights, they actually have to put a harness on and sort of like float up there. It's really a bad situation. I don't know, it's kind of like those air conditioners on the top that are like this far from the edge of the building. So I'm not sure about that building. But anyway, to replace those bulbs, that's what has to happen. And I have to usually have that done twice a year. By going to the LED bulbs, they tell me that I will not have to replace those bulbs for 9 years. And I'm really hoping that is true, because it costs a fortune to try to pay somebody. Not many people want to get up there hanging by a thread to replace those bulbs. They will have to change the case in the bulb, that it plugs into. They won't replace the whole canister, but just the
Socket.
the socket, thank you. The socket that the bulb goes into.
Did they give you an estimation on cost savings?
They did not. They just told me, well, actually, they told me that it would pay for itself in 2 years' time. So, I mean, that was pretty effective, really. Because it costs about $5,000 every time they come and change those bulbs, and they were having to do that twice a year. So the cost of this is $21,400, and within 2 years, I would have my money back. And that's not including this money that you save with the LED bulb on your utilities. That's just the saving the amount of the person having to actually change the bulbs in 2 years' time.
Are we using the same company?
I'm sorry?
Are we using the same company using at the fairgrounds?
We're not, it's not the same type of bulb, so it's not the same. I don't know that it'll be the same company, and we haven't bid that out yet. We did get a price. I did call, but I haven't gotten official bids. I'm hoping that it'll come under this amount, but their bulbs are totally different than what's in the auditorium.
Okay. Questions?
Mayor, is there any way the ice machine can go ahead and be replaced and pay it out of?
You were, that is a good question. One that
Yeah.
would you, to see if we have,
She has some extras and things that she saved, so I'll see if there's.
okay, okay.
That's a
And if we
relatively
have, we'll just go
small
ahead
amount,
and
yeah.
take bids on that to see what they come in at as far as an ice machine.
We won't even have to bid it, it's $2,000.
It is, okay. Okay, that's what
Did
we'll
you
do.
put your downstairs pool in that budget for next year?
No, we tried real hard to have a pool down there this past week, but no, it's being fixed.
Dan had a little flooding damage over there during the last
We
rain.
had an
but it
air
really wouldn't
conditioner
cause a
whose
rain.
gasket
Yeah.
bursted and it,
Yeah.
so we've had a couple of inches of water in our offices upstairs, but at least that many inches downstairs. And they did come by yesterday, just an update to say that the walls down there were not drying and that the carpets have started curling up. So they feel like they're gonna be replaced as well, so,
Thank goodness for insurance,
Yeah.
right? That's why we have money in our budget to pay
sorry,
insurance.
I'm trying real hard.
Okay, any other questions from Diane on the NED? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we're ready for the Civic Center and the arena.
Right.
Al, Perry, come on up. Those of you may not know, Perry's been at the Civic Center and the arena for how many months? A couple months? A couple months.
Closing in on a quarter here pretty soon.
Okay, and Perry was really with groundskeeping for a while, but he spent many years in business and well qualified for the job. And I want the council to be sure and meet him and know who he is. Perry has an MBA from UT Knoxville, which is obviously one of the most revered MBAs to be had in the world.
Go Vols.
Absolutely.
That was hard for me to say. But anyway, Perry Murphy, and Perry has been down at the Civic Center for about 2.5 months. So if you have any questions, any comments as far as his budgets, we're talking about the Civic Center and Oman.
I guess I'll bring back the question we talked about earlier on the revenue for the Civic Center. Year-to-date, we've got $123,000 in revenue. We're budgeting $262,000 for next year. Is there something big that's changed that's going to get our revenue back up above and beyond what we received this year?
Well, I'll have to take responsibility. I worked with Perry, and Perry was in the process of first going back and understanding the type of events that we've had. We had a number in there from Mo's that, quite frankly, we couldn't come up with how he had arrived at that. So I ballparked the number, to be quite frankly.
Okay.
And
As we discussed earlier, lest we forget the 55 or 60,000 from 54.
There is a line item in there, Councilman Wallace, for the rent, the Civic Center parking lot rent from the state.
Right.
So that's $54,000.
So I was sure of that.
Okay.
Is that
Okay, I'm
showing?
sorry, you're right, okay.
Because the total is $262,000 proposed, $54,000 that's gonna come from the rent.
still up a pretty good bit, but that does account for some of it.
Well, I mean, for what they brought in, keep in mind, you're looking at March numbers.
Yeah, but I was annualizing that to 150 for the year, and then 262, you know, minus the 54 is still 200. That's still, you know,
And they were 123 at March 31st.
oh, right. Okay.
Okay, operating budget for the arena. We're still obviously in a use mode for Oman Arena by the Jackson-Madison County School System as it relates to Madison Academic High School, rentals for Lane College for their home games. Karen, the revenue going into the arena from the school system is,
It has a separate line item called reimbursement school system. It's
Okay.
in the reimbursement in your revenue section, so it's separated out.
okay.
So that we can track that, so we know our reimbursement.
Okay. As indicated earlier, I think within the past, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months, we've done a good job as far as the staff has. Looking at utility costs there, we've kept the lights down, kept the lights off, kept the chillers off when they weren't needed, kept the boilers off when they weren't needed, and hopefully still halfway remaining comfortable in the building. And the same now is happening at the Civic Center, and we had a period, you still have that last numbers generated by the office as far as going back several months, March,
I
April?
don't have them right here. I think it was from January, the first quarter of this year. I think our gas consumption was up about $2,500, $3,000. That was probably in January and February with the cool weather, but that was offset by the decrease in electrical consumption around 9,300.
Yeah, still a plus number as
A
far as
plus
bringing
number,
the
yes.
cost down.
And we're just really getting started.
Yeah, okay.
With
Okay. Operating for either one of the buildings?
Do we add any additional staff members to the Civic Center? I see we got an increase of about almost 41,000 in salaries.
We did increase the staff. There was one person that was full-time that is currently part-time that is, has a projected exit date probably in the first of the fall. I didn't completely reduce that salary just because I wasn't for sure of how that may work out. But the decrease in the energy consumption, should more than offset that.
How many more staff did you hire?
Pardon?
How many more staff people did you hire?
We hired 2.
Are they in the office staff or downstairs or what? What are they? More so.
We hired 2 in the office with the anticipation of the one full-time leaving, and they're both part-time. And then there's one downstairs. We kind of did a rotation. There was one retired in February, at the end of February, that was full-time. And a person that had been there for a long time, part-time, moved into that full-time position. And so then we filled that part-time position with another person, just kind of re-plugged them in.
So it's not additional staff? How much additional staff?
There would be additional staff.
Kind of got confused there.
I'm sorry. There would be additional staff in the office or administration portion.
Okay.
We had 2 retirements, kind of back-to-back there. Mose Burton, who'd been there a number of years, retired, and so did one of the other full-time employees, retired about the same time. And
Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller.
Yeah, Manley Fuller. And so he's taken those 2 positions, plugged in part-time people, sent them into full-time that had been there probably way too long, part-time. We should have done something with them before. And then kind of got some people downstairs to give us a hand down there.
And using the same people at the home arena, same staff, or they just working at both places?
We work at both places. I got to give Donnie credit that he knows that building better than anybody on planet Earth.
He's been there 50 years.
Yeah. And,
He's been there.
He lived there. He lived there.
We're pretty much auxiliary help when we go over there, and he's kind of spearheads that.
Yeah, really, both staffs operate both buildings, and that's amazing.
A question, I think I've asked him earlier. A group that we got come from Brownsville working part-time, who was that group for?
Showpay, which is a Trit. The name is Trit, but they're a company that does stage production, lighting, sound, and things like that. Occasionally, we will call them to come in and assist in the evenings. The schedule that we're going through right now has a lot of bookings, and a lot of this was booked, last year sometime. So we may have an event that utilizes the risers or the bleacher seating, and then the next day there may be an event, a gala or a dinner that requires table seating. Well, those risers, there's 18 sections. I don't know if you've ever seen them come in and go out, but they have to be, it's about an 8-hour process. So typically, we may have to clean up at midnight, and then maybe a couple of employees like Andy and then Travis is called under that, or willing to come in at midnight, but they need some help. And the people at Showpay, there's a couple of gentlemen there who are familiar with that process. I think they've assisted over the last 5 years. So they can come in, or willing to come in at a pretty reasonable price and work that graveyard shift. So, I mean, and I've thought about it, instead of trying to hire new people, we'd be overstaffed other parts of the time, and they're a perfect solution to come plug in because it's somewhat of a dangerous operation. We have to get the forklift out from the basement, bring it up on the hydraulic lift from the stage, and use it to tow each individual section, put it back on the lift, lower it back down below the stage, park it. It's kind of like parking in the parking garage, then bring the elevator back up, begin the disassembly process for the other, where they collapse together, then secure them, then go through that process. It's about an 8-hour process.
And then what about the rally? When last time we replaced our rallies down there?
At the Civic Center, I don't know if they've ever been replaced.
The what?
The rally seating, I think.
The seating that you were talking about, I don't think it's ever been replaced.
I know it would be very expensive to do because that's a highly specialized piece of equipment.
Yeah, 'cause I think Mr. Eaton, his finger.
Yeah, there's several.
Got
Got to
hurt.
be careful moving
Yeah, 'cause
those
they-
things.
I think that happened a couple of years ago. We
Yeah, I think
addressed
they
that
were-
issue. They were utilizing some come-alongs, if you're familiar with that. Anyway, we purchased some more reliable load securement items for about, I think, $750.
Okay, any questions on the operating budget? We'll go over to the capital budget, see what we have there.
And capital is the curtains, you may want to comment on that. Curtains for the main stage.
Yes. There's one curtain in particular that's been brought to my attention. It's the white. If you attend a show at the Civic Center and you see colored lighting, it's against that white curtain backdrop, similar to the screen right there. It is in need of repair. There was a weight that was sewn into the bottom of the curtain, somewhat like if you had this pin on the bottom of this paper. And it actually, my understanding, a few months back, that the fabric ripped and the weight fell out of it. But it's got several holes. It's just like exposed dry rotting. I've been given all kind of theories. It's just an old, very old curtain, and when I learned what it cost, I thought, oh my goodness. It does have one fairly large tear that we may try to patch up before this next dance recital, but that has been brought to the forefront of my attention on numerous occasions. And I really don't know what we'll do for the Miss Tennessee pageant coming up in June, in the middle of June. We'll do the best we can.
But you said you don't know the cost of the curtain. You don't know the cost, what it would be.
I think I've called a few people, and I mean, obviously, no one here in town's got them. Probably that particular curtain, I think we can get one for around $9,000 or $10,000. I don't know if that included, shipping, because it'll actually be pretty heavy once you get that much fabric. It'll, forklift unload it. It's about, I think that one is 80, I think that one's actually 100 linear feet in length, and I don't know the height, probably 60. And we may be able to get by with a little bit smaller one because the stage is actually 80 feet. So I think one just like that one would be around 14,000, but we might can purchase one a little bit smaller.
Okay, is that for capital, your curtain?
We can expand that if you'd like to.
You don't have it in there now?
Yeah, it's
I thought it was in there.
It is.
What's that?
Yeah.
We have a new sign in Open Arena as well.
Yes, there's a sign in the works, and electronic, a more contemporary method of announcing events at Omen.
It's right up here on the top.
What are we gonna do with that old one? It's a good looking. Down on Allen
Probably have
Street.
it delivered to your home if you like.
Sell it for surplus property.
Actually, the last I heard is the sign company that was in consideration of installing the new sign was willing to take that one down at no charge. I thought, well, there must be something of value to them.
Yeah.
Aluminum or wiring, or maybe they've got a use for it, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe an antique dealer. Councilman Congress said.
You never know.
Okay, good deal. Sign and curtains for capital. Any additional questions from council? Civic Center and Omen Arena?
No, I just like to say Mr. Murphy's come in with both hands up and doing a great job, and I appreciate him. Anybody who can listen at me and try to comprehend what I say, he's all right.
Thank you.
I think we'll go along with that.
joking.
And
Okay.
if anyone ever needs to contact me, you know where to find me.
All right. Any other questions? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, okay. Okay, what have we got left?
Well, we have a few
Miscellaneous
standalone
funds.
items that I'll just make comments on, like Riverside Cemetery is still $18,000 for the maintenance. And I'm preparing a letter for you, Mayor, to sign to the Riverside Cemetery Association where we have $161,000, and we just have to justify pulling that money out, and I'm sure we can, because the whole idea, the intent, and I'm not sure if the association still exists. I think, I hate to say this, but most people have passed away, and it's really Regions Trust Department. And, you know, the whole idea was that the earnings from that $161,000 would take care of the maintenance. But in today's market, where you're earning less than 1%, we get, you know, $2,000 or $3,000 a year. That doesn't take care of it. So I'm drafting a letter for you, and we should be able to cover that.
Have we drawn any funds from that account before?
No, not in my tenure. It's just grown.
Yeah, we've always maintained it, I think, out of the general fund, and this year we're projecting to take the money from that fund and pay for at least maintenance.
Right. But it's a little difficult, you know, because the Regions Trust Department can't locate anybody in the association, so by matter of default, the city recorder becomes the head of the association. So if there's only one vote, I vote that we take the money and use it accordingly.
Has there ever been thoughts of trying to expand that cemetery?
Yes, in fact, not under Scott's administration, but trying to remember who we had stand previously. Yeah, Johnny Williams. We had actually opened up a section, and Clarence in engineering, who's since retired, had laid out where we would have some new. In fact, we contacted you on that.
Yeah, I wasn't sure my brain was working right.
No,
but,
we contacted you on that, and then it just, people started retiring and being replaced, and We have it laid out right along the road there. And we might want to pursue that in the future.
At one time, yeah, they were on the far south end of the cemetery.
They cut it out.
The county does cremation now, so.
Another one-liner on their mayor is Pringles Park, and we show no increase. And the problem with Pringles Park is that it's 16, 17 years old, and we have had Walker J. Walker perform a study listing every HVAC piece of equipment, because last year we spent $45,000 repairing air conditioning equipment, not only in the clubhouse and in the main building, but also, when I say air conditioning, I'm talking about all the concession stand air.
Well, with all that work that we've done in that and on the field, what else is there to go wrong?
Well, for example, one night last week, the fuse box went out on one of the light standards. You know, I think they have 4 or 5, and they almost had to cancel the game because they lost lighting in one area. There's just a lot more involved there, and we have a quote now from Hornsby to replace all the fuse boxes.
We put all new lights up, haven't
we? We have put all new lights up, yes. Well, I shouldn't say we put all new lights up. We replaced those that we were mandated by the Southern Association, where there was dead lights, dead space in right center and left center.
So that just took care of bulbs, is that all that did?
Yes. And the utilities, we're doing everything we can. We have made tremendous progress in the water and sewer, which at one time we thought we had a major leak that somehow has disappeared, but we still run higher than I think we should. And Scott Chandler has assigned Josh to work with me, and every month we do a comparison of what the utilities were from year to year, and Josh factors in the temperature change, and we are working on reducing the utilities because that's a major source.
Do we need to just put a dollar amount in there for expenditures, or just when it comes up have to take it out of fund balance?
No, we have a budgeted amount in there, and
so you just didn't increase it?
Right.
Okay.
Did not increase it.
Al, what is the remaining debt in Pringles, roughly?
Let's see, it's going to be paid off at the end of your tenure here, assuming you don't run again. And I'm trying to think what that number is, Mayor, but it's...
Karen, is 1.6 or something?
It's about
1.5, and really we're not in a huge rush to pay that off because of
the fact that we get sales tax recovery as long as there is debt.
As long as there is debt.
Yes. Up to 30 years.
We're not going to jump out there and pay it off next year, even though, well, until the school money we could have, but we're not going to because of retention of sales taxes in the ballpark.
And the only item we have on capital, remember last year we had a tremendous expenditure of right at $199,000 for the new field, but it has allowed them to play games that they previously would not have been able to play. And the only item that we have now is a playground, because the situation is really people go to minor league games for entertainment, and half the people walk out the the gate don't even know who won or lost. But it's for the young kids, and for the real young kids haven't had anything to do, so
My
we're
grandchildren
looking at a playground.
Thought we put a playground in last year. Or is this a different type?
No, we talked about,
No, it's one y'all voted down last year.
Okay.
there's a,
They wanted a playground, we should give it to them last year.
we
Okay.
put one in the
And now we're gonna give it to
sportsplex,
them.
which has turned out to be so popular that people actually come for the playground and not even come to see their kids play ball. I mean, it is that nice of a playground. So that would take care of that item on Pringles, and I don't know if we have anyone here to speak for the depot.
That was Tony's.
Yeah, that's recreation, that's.
Yeah, Tony, I think he spoke for the depot in Cypress.
Yes.
I don't know if he mentioned anything about tennis center. He did mention Liberty Gardens. And we've talked about the golf course. So Mayor, I don't know if there's any other
We're
items.
gonna hear from Miss Kathleen Honeycutt and the health and sanitation.
Oh, okay, we're gonna go to other
Yeah,
funds.
let's go ahead and get, clerk can go back to work.
Yeah.
Wait too long.
Good afternoon.
Health and sanitation is considered a special revenue fund, and it's in the back of your ordinance section. And I'll let Kathleen, it is in
This is solid waste collection.
the binder. But Kathleen, you might go ahead and explain what you've taken over, additional duties, responsibilities.
As of July 1, my department is going to assume the sweepers for the city streets because it keeps the city clean, and that's part of health and sanitation. So I am gaining 2 employees plus their equipment, and I'm also increasing the utilities it's actually shown on Utilities Union Street to include the sweeper bay, which is about $18,000 plus. The Union Street facility is where we've been having our household hazardous waste events. It's worked out very well. We've spent some money down there on the driveway to make it very accessible. And then at some point, the dog park will open in the grassy area there. That's the major increase. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
I just have a quick question, Kathleen. Have we kind of caught up on our rubbish pickup?
Yes, we
Okay.
are.
Okay, because I know for.
Today, we have.
Okay,
Yeah.
right,
That-
until the next big
till the
storm,
next-
but I know
till the next
for a
event.
while we kind of got behind because
Right.
we were just kind of overwhelmed for a while.
We were.
But, well, that's good to hear. Okay.
You're
thank
having a sweep today, is that correct?
That's correct.
In East Jackson. And we thank you for helping out with us about 3 weeks ago for the Great American Cleanup.
That was,
Y'all did a
that was a.
fantastic job.
That was a really good day, because there were a lot of things that happened that day.
I picked up a little paper.
I know you did.
Kathleen, seeing that your special revenue account, obviously, over the next year, and 2 years, and 3 years, until we try to get it changed in Nashville with a new comptroller, you're going to obviously have some fund balance in your special revenue account. Would there be a priority to perhaps maybe pick up a couple of more of the trash plow trucks?
Yes, sir.
And train?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. I know we get some help from Waste Management and especially on the weekends and time that we're not there, but I think with the continued growth of the city, especially out northwest, and people continuing to do landscaping around their homes, that it may be something that we may need to consider. And I think from all indications that you will have that in your budget as far as your fund balance.
Our house count now, as far as garbage collection, is 22,430. That's how many homes we pick up garbage twice a week. But we also operate all of our claw trucks. I try to keep a claw truck in every section under most routine daily operations. And then when we have special weather events, we just have to prioritize those sections where we need to put extra equipment there.
And if we do have those special weather events, then you have a possibility of 22,000 houses that have trash in the front.
Yes. We also have added 187 properties that the building department has put on our permanent mowing list, so we will be maintaining those during mowing season, which is roughly March through October. We've consolidated some of those together so that when we go in, we do them with one effort. But they have given us an additional 187. That, over the years, we have been mowing and attaching liens to those properties, but it's ended up costing us more money to add the liens, so we're putting them permanently on our list because we've never been able to find out who owned the properties.
On the claw trucks, going back to that, our contract with Waste Management for residential pickup, that's not included for the claw truck pickup, is it, for the?
They provide up to 3 claw trucks on, 4 to 5 days a week, sometimes on Saturdays. And then that supplements what we have.
Okay, so that's kind of a shared?
Yes,
Okay,
that's a shared responsibility. We talk to them every morning, tell them where they should be working that day.
So they provide 3, and then whatever they can't get to, then we'll help out trying to.
Well, we have our regularly scheduled pickup areas. We try to provide, when we've got the personnel and when we've got the equipment, one grain bed truck with every claw truck. So they go along behind them and pick up the smaller piles, pick up some of the bagged things that people leave out that aren't picked up by Waste Management.
What I'm trying to figure out is, if we're paying Waste Management to do that, and then we're doing it also?
We're doing it also, yes, but Waste Management is primarily for garbage collection.
Okay. So, but in our contract with them, I mean, they're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart, obviously.
No, it's in the contract.
In our contract with them, the contract just says they provide 3 claw trucks and pick up.
They just provide debris pickup once a week.
Okay. And then we're doing it whenever they can't get to it.
And we're doing it on a daily basis.
Okay,
We operate more claw trucks than they do.
all right, I'll talk to you and the mayor about that.
Okay.
I don't understand why if we're paying them to do it, why we're coming there and doing it also. That throws me off a little bit. So.
Because they're primarily for garbage collection.
Okay.
That
Okay,
is-
and our claw trucks are limbs and.
Limbs and
Okay,
brush
okay,
and
okay.
anything
Okay,
else that
okay,
we
I'm
can
with you
pick
then,
up.
okay. All right. The other question, I guess, is
Go ahead, you're not finished.
on the transfer from the general fund for expenses of $500,000, that's in the expenditures for the health and sanitation department?
Those are some expenses that have been paid out of the general fund in the past.
Okay, they should say
That's it.
transfer too. That's
Yes.
what the general fund is charging the health and sanitation department for all the services that
Yes.
we're applying. Okay. Okay.
Because it really
Mainly
is a-
for the time the mayor puts into supervising the health and sanitation
Yes.
superintendent.
And-
It's worth
and-
$500,000.
And Mr. Dawson and Mr. Ledoux.
Yeah. Let me ask this question, Mr. Chairman, I think it's geared toward Al. When is the next, on the contract with Waste Management, when is the next rate hike proposed? Is it next year?
We haven't got any set schedule, for rate hike from them.
Yes.
It's every August,
Right.
and it's
Okay.
based on the CPI index, which we had estimated was going to be, 3%. But the consumer price index over the last couple of years has run 1.87.
Less than 2%.
Less than 2%.
And then also in January, Allied increases their disposal rate to
Okay.
us. But
But nothing will come before the council in this budget.
as far as the new contract for garbage collection will be 2016.
Okay. That's, thank you.
Okay, have we re-looked at what we're charging for residential and commercial garbage both to see if we're still being fair, charging close to what the expense for the city is lately?
We are very fair. We are not planning another increase.
Okay, but we're covering our expenses.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes, but we're the cheapest. I think Brownsville was the only city in any area around here, like Germantown was charging $24 for the same service that we charge 16 something.
Okay.
We're still doing backdoor service, which is pretty obsolete as far as other cities are concerned, but it has worked very well for us, and that's what we hope to keep that.
I just want to make sure we're breaking even on the process.
Yes, we are.
pretty much, and not overcharging.
Yes.
And the capital item, Mayor, on H&S is not in our capital fund, so Kathleen, you might want to address on page 2 of your section, the capital
I'm trying to purchase another single axle dump truck. We use the single axle dump trucks to assist with loading and hauling. Ideally, when we're picking up debris, I have a claw truck, a smaller bean bed truck, and a dump truck that the claw can load to make it more efficient. Then they can be going back and forth to the landfill while the claw is actually loading itself. So I'm going to eventually have all single axle dump trucks because they're more efficient. The bean bed trucks are good for smaller things, but I'd like to be able to eventually get to all single axle dump trucks because they're easier to load, and we can use them in a lot of different ways. I'm also purchasing another leaf machine, and we have several leaf machines that are very, very old, and this last year we had a lot of trouble with our machines being out of service. So I feel like that's very necessary.
Okay, any other questions or comments from? May inform the council, we were notified in September by the controller's office that the transferring of those funds were not consistent with controller's ideal of best practices in bookkeeping. That was about 3 months after we approved the budget. We got that word in September or October. We predicated the budget on that transfer. So for the council.
And they had approved our budget too.
They had approved our budget. So for the council of information, if anything comes up on the audit, that we have went ahead and made those transfers because they approved it in July when we sent it to them, and the budget was predicated on that transfer. This next year, however, there lies the problem. We're not able to make those transfers, and we're going to continue to look at that practice through the controller's office and see if we can't try to intervene somewhere along the way.
Okay.
Any other questions from?
Are you talking about that $500,000 that we've got in there now? We may not be able to do that?
No.
We can do that.
Okay. Okay, that's what I thought we were doing. I want to make sure I understood. I thought you were saying, okay, but now we can, okay.
Yeah, no, this is on last year's budget.
Okay,
Where it was
okay.
predicated on us making that transfer, which we've been able to do for 25 or 30 years, and all of a sudden somebody changes their mind, we can't. So we've made that transfer this year, or will before this fiscal year is over. We just will not be able to do it after July 1 unless some practices change in the comptroller's office. Okay, Kathleen, thank you very much. Al, where are we?
Well, we probably ought to, and I'll just discuss a couple of ones that are almost in and out. The CRA Fund Community Redevelopment, all we do there is pass the
you know, we guaranteed the HUD loan that went to the CRA for $3.2 million. $1.6 million went to District 1, $1.6 million to District 2. And the payments are made through the CRA fund, but it's an in and out situation. So it really has no significance as far as bottom line. And then you see the Community Development Fund, and that's basically Dave Ralston's numbers that he has come already to the council and had his plan approved. So the next fund would be, well, down at the bottom is the old city landfill, old Highway 470 landfill, and all we're doing there, it sounds crazy, but it goes up as high as $65,000 that TEC does studies for the state, reports that have to be turned in, and we have to keep the flame burning. And it's someday that flame is going to go out, and I don't know what the general rules are there. But we have a reserve behind this. And the next thing would be then the Sportsplex Fund.
Al, you did something to the projector again. It's
Help him
fuzzy.
stand.
Fuzzy.
Focus. You're out of focus there.
Yeah, okay. The point is there, Scott, that it's just a maintenance item where we hire a third-party TEC to do the reporting, and I don't think it's going to actually be $65,000 anymore because the reporting is less and less, and then there is a provision for keeping the flame burning, so to speak, that they monitor. And if Ricky, if you don't mind Ricky coming forward then and addressing the Sportsplex.
Afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Afternoon, sir.
Just a couple of quick items to share with you, and then I'll be very happy to take any questions you have on the budget. Again, we had another great year this past year. Our totals have continued to increase, not only with our tournaments, but with our league play at this point. We had some goals set with our annual report that we sent to the mayor and for the city's information. We had several goals that we were setting. One of those was to actually sell sponsorships for all of our tournaments. We have a total of 22 baseball and 20 softball tournaments for actual about 42 tournaments. That's fall and in our spring and summer. We're very glad to announce that we have sold every sponsorship for our spring and our summer tournaments. That is a first for us. These are smaller sponsorships, but that is the community saying we're still involved. We want to be involved. We see that it has been successful, but now we're kind of going out now saying, what can we do to help you and help your business by people seeing what you're doing for us? And so we're very pleased to announce that that is happening and taking place at this point. There may be some numbers, Al, that you may be sharing with them concerning overall.
Well, I just go back and take a look at, since we don't have this year's numbers yet, but if you recall from last year when you got your audit report from ATA, we had an operating income of $229,000, and then when you take the non-operating items, which includes the West Tennessee Healthcare donation, we come down to an income of $246,000. We would be trending along that same line for this year if we don't have any significant number of rainouts, as the mayor is smiling. And basically, though, we wanted to give you a picture of the 7-year operation for the Sportsplex. Let me
While Al is doing that, let me share with you that last year, to refresh your memories, we did have 4 full rainouts. Each tournament is considered a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but we had 4 full rainouts and then plus 3 days over the entire year. To date, we have 1 full rainout and about 4 days. We've gone ahead this past weekend. We had to call and cancel, call that for a rainout. So actually, we've got 2 rainouts with about 2 days at this point. So we're probably going to head. I'm not going to say we are going to head into, but in the past, this has been a better weather situation from this point forward. If we're going to have anything, usually it is early.
How much do those rainouts cost us?
Hard to say because of the size of the tournaments, but usually those are, Councilman, what happens usually if those get rained out, for instance, this last weekend it got rained out, we have tournament teams, many of them, not all of them, that turn right back around and get into another tournament. And so it'd be kind of hard to put an exact number on there. It would just depend on the size of the tournament. Last year, for instance, we had a couple of them almost back to back, and for the next 2 weekends, we had right at 100+ teams. So those teams that can come back usually get back in and come to other ones.
This is a summary here of, see if I can get this in a little better position. We started out with a total debt of $9 million. $3 million of that was with inside of other city bonded debt, and $6 million was 12-year capital outlay notes to Bancorp South. And we are right now at $4,779,000. We will have the 12-year capital outlay notes paid on time, but this is another situation where we always want to have some debt because that's the way we're able to get the rebate from the state on the state shared sales taxes, which has come from nothing, $8,000, all the way up to $624,000. The hotel motel tax is a 10-year deal, so we only have 3 more years of hotel motel, and the West Tennessee Healthcare donation is basically up to the council. That was that goes to both the county and the city. It's a minimum of $200,000, can be a maximum of $1 million, but from the articles we read from Bobby Arnold, we don't look for any more than $200,000. And what we're really trying to plan, Ricky and I, is that somewhere 3 years down the line, we're going to have to realize that we're not going to get this hotel motel tax because that's going to go back to the normal sharing, 40% city, 40% county, and 20% to the CEDC, right. And this has been a real good thing for us. Of course, we've contributed to the growth in those hotel motel numbers, but our sponsorships also end in 10 years, most of them. Bancorp South, Coca-Cola, and the West Tennessee Healthcare naming rights. So we have to be thinking 3 years ahead as to what are we going to do with some of this lost revenue. Not do with it, but replace it. And that's where we're depending upon the growth of the number of teams and the concessions and gift shop, things of that nature, and this sales tax. We had one major new venture that has gone in out at Exit 85, and that's the Sky Zone trampoline place. I've been out there and watched my grandchildren. I certainly couldn't jump, and I don't think it's for anybody probably in this age group right here, but It has become a tremendous success, and Tommy Carter is looking at possible expansions beyond that to make Exit 85 really the entertainment zone for the city of Jackson. So we're looking forward to that. But what my point is, we're paying off our debt, no problem. We don't really ever want this to come down to zero for the next 30 years, because this, like Pringles, is a means of us getting rebates from the state on the sales tax.
Explain that to me. Is that money that's not local sales tax that's collected?
It's local sales tax that is collected for that Gary Taylor 60 acres.
Okay. But if it didn't go to Pringles, if we didn't have debt, and so it didn't go to Pringles Park, it would come back to the city though, wouldn't it?
That's right.
Okay, I thought you were saying that the state would keep it.
We
and I was
wouldn't
going,
lose
whoa.
it, but
Okay, so you're just saying we want to keep debt so that we can give that money to the Sportsplex?
I am saying that because that's the one largest means of support.
Okay. But the city could give them the money anyways if we wanted to, couldn't we?
We could.
Okay.
So the Sportsplex is making it on its own as far as the operations. We're doing well on payment of debt, and it is always subject to, as the mayor and Ricky and I have talked many times, the weather-related conditions. And Ricky, you might want to go into the capital, which again, with this year, the mayor cut us back to about $16,000. We had an irrigation project planned in there, and rightly so. The mayor's point was we should spend money only if it's going to be revenue-producing money.
Okay, before you get into capital, can we stay on the revenue for?
Sure, I'm sorry.
The hotel motel tax, how many more years did you say?
3.
Three more years?
Right.
How about the West Tennessee Healthcare pledge for that 200,000 a year? Is that?
That's ongoing. That's going to be up to the council if you ever find another tourism project. You know,
Okay, but my question is, how much longer is West Tennessee Healthcare guaranteed to give us that money? Is that, don't they do that every year?
That was voted on in about 1986.
Yeah, before I came over here, it was, normally, it's based on their investments, the revenue from their investments. At one time, both the city and county got $1 million, you know, and then we've got checks for 600,000, but for the last number of years, we've got the minimum, which has been 200,000. Now, that 200,000 that we get from West Tennessee Healthcare, usually in October, November, or whenever it is.
September, October.
Yeah, goes into the Sportsplex debt rather than coming into the general fund. Now, that was voted on by council.
My question is, can the hospital decide they're not going to give us that next year?
Well, I guess they could rescind their resolution, which they passed initially a number of years ago, and I guess it all depends on, it's tied to their investments, not tied to their profit-making, their expenses. It's tied basically to their investment portfolio. If it continues to make money, I'll assume we'll still get it. If it doesn't, they start losing money on their investments. I don't know how you can do that. I guess I could have probably.
That was done by council action back 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
In that resolution, Randy, reads though that money, whatever it is, 200,000, 300,000, cannot be used for operations.
Okay.
It has to be
Yeah,
capital.
what we
and-
use it for, that wasn't what my concern was, whether or not, because I knew the hospital was having problems, whether or not they're going to cut that off next year,
and
which I guess
that
they could.
Way of knowing.
They would have, their board would have to meet and rescind the previous resolution.
Okay. Thank you.
Al did mention the capital budget, and you have that in front of you. That is a very aggressive capital budget. And one of the things, as the mayor and Al and I met, was that we did need to look at possible increase of revenue. And if you look at those particular items, what probably stands out the most is a building in Complex B. Sportsplex has 4 complexes, 4 pods, if you will, of fields. Each of those either house a different age group, or in one case, over near Pringles Park, we have our softball, our girls softball. And so one of the things we looked at was what could we do to increase money coming into the sportsplex, and that is something we definitely have to look at, starting with this year and then in the next 3 to 4 years. We do have a 5-year plan for our capital, and after meeting with the mayor now, this is what we've come up with our first one, and it has the most areas covering additional revenue. Probably the biggest is our building in B. Each of our complexes, each of our pods have a building with the exception of B. B is right behind the main entrance to the park, and there is quite a distance from there for restrooms and concessions. Presently, they have to come down to the main building, which is a pretty good walk. And so we have put on there, with the major part of it, a building complex and restroom in Complex B. And then we are going to add, we have a very, very small gift shop in A, and we're going to put that gift shop in C, which is the oldest boys group, and place a new one in Complex A. Those combined areas of capital needs will increase our budget somewhere in the neighborhood of $90,000 to $100,000 per year, based on our movement of and building of complex buildings inside each of the complexes.
Okay, council, any additional questions from Ricky on the operating or on the capital for the sportsplex? If not, thank you very much, Rick. Appreciate your time. Al, are we ready for consideration of the ordinance?
I think we have covered, well, no, we haven't covered two main funds, the debt service fund and the capital fund. And the debt service fund, basically, let me see if I can find what I did with the spreadsheet on that, but the debt service fund is segregated in the back of your book, and basically we're going to be drawing down the 7.615800, which I'm sorry, 7,605,800,000 is the balance left in the 15.3 million. We're going to be drawing that down and forwarding and transferring it to the capital fund. Other revenues that come into the debt service fund are the 20 cents on the dollar that we talked about on our pie charts. So basically, we have a balanced budget, and the capital fund then is the beneficiary of the balance of the borrowed funds. And we've already talked about all the capital projects that would make that up.
Right.
Al, in the debt service fund, we were saying we're gonna pay that $1 million to the school out of debt service?
Yes.
Is that in the budget here somewhere?
No, that's on the sheet that Ms.
That's on that
Bell
extra
has
sheet we're gonna add
prepared.
to next time?
Right.
Okay, okay.
Right.
I just didn't see it, and I thought it should be in there, so.
Right, it'll be, it's on this sheet now, and before we leave, I just want to refresh my memory, and I think, Randy, you were involved. You asked us to look at central dispatch, I believe, was one item. We thought that maybe Lenanda was short on some funds.
Karen's got, you got those notes? Okay, Karen's got those
Okay.
notes for the minute. If council has no objection, this is the ordinance on first reading. We've heard the entire budget. I know we'll have some additions that Karen picked up today. We had some even prior coming into the meeting based on negotiations as far as the mixed drink tax. If council so votes, we'll accept this ordinance on first reading. When we meet in June, we'll hear those amendments, and we will vote on the budget as amended at the June meeting.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Move that we adopt the ordinance for the 2014-2015 fiscal year operating and capital budget.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. This is ordinance on first reading. And Sam or Kathleen or Karen, if you all have any comments to make to support or be in opposition to the passage of this ordinance, we'll hear those at this time. Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. We have a motion and a second. Discussion, council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
And then, Mayor, we have the tax ordinance, which somehow I've lost in all the paperwork here, but basically, here it is. There is no change in the tax rate. The only change is in the distribution between the debt service and the general fund, and that was minute.
Move we accept the tax rate.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. This is also an ordinance on first reading, and I'll open the public hearing to see if there's anyone present to speak in support of or opposition to the passage of this ordinance. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. We have a motion and a second. Discussion from council. Council, please vote.
And the vote is unanimous.
And the next item on my agenda says adjourn.
My favorite one.
All right, guys, all right.